Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Am I Worthy? By Blick_Blick. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin Chapter 1, The person whom my story began quirkless. Incompetent. Underdeveloped. Inferior. Unworthy. These words have haunted me for as long as I can remember. And over time, I began to believe them. Incompetent, just as they said. In a world ruled by quirks, being born without one is a sentence to insignificance. But it wasn't always like this. When the first, zero, patient was documented in the city of Chongqing, China, no one knew what to think. It was unprecedented, a phenomenon that defied logic. Panic spread. Fear gripped entire cities. And soon, quirks were seen not as miracles, but as curses. In the beginning, those born with quirks were persecuted, branded heretics and bringers of calamity. What followed was chaos. Destruction. The collapse of all known order. That time came to be known as the Dark Age of Quirks. For decades, fear ruled. Trust crumbled. Not even yourself could be trusted, because no one knew when, or if, a quirk might awaken inside you. In a world where a mere spark of power could turn friend into foe, getting a quirk wasn't a blessing. It was a death sentence. Humanity fears what it cannot understand. And when it fears, it attacks. People turn savage, hunting down the gifted. Those with quirks had no choice but to fight back. Over time, as their numbers grew, the tide turned. What was once seen as a curse, became something else. Something to be admired. Desired. Controlled. And with that, the world changed forever. Present day, happy birthday, Izuku. The voice rang out with warmth. A slender green-haired woman in a pink apron stood in the kitchen, beaming. Her love filled the room like sunlight. To me, she was the kindest, most wonderful person in the world. The man who was supposed to raise me never kept his promise. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Izuku Midoriya was just a boy. 4 years old, full of wonder and dreams of becoming a pro-hero, just like all the others. At that age, most kids began to show signs of their quirks, inherited from parents, but Izuku had shown nothing yet. Still, his mother watched him with a mixture of worry and affection as he replayed old news clips of All Might, Japan's symbol of peace. He adored All Might. Imitated his lines. Copied his techniques. Even practiced that iconic booming laugh. It made his mother smile. What could be more precious than seeing your child shine with the hope of a hero? Oh, my little hero. Come here and give mommy a hug. She set her cooking aside and scooped him up in her arms. He wrapped his arms around her neck, laughing. But Mom, I'm not little anymore. I'm a big kid now. He pouted, crossing his arms dramatically. She laughed, ruffling his already messy green hair. Izuku, even when you're taller than me, you'll still be my sweet little boy. Those words filled him with warmth. He hugged her tightly, so tightly they both forgot about the food on the stove. MOM. The food's burning. She spun around in panic and dashed back to the kitchen. Izuku, open the window. Looks like dinner's ruined, his face dropped. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to. Now we don't have dinner because of me. Tears welled in his eyes. His mother knelt beside him, stroking his hair softly. Izuku, look at me. He looked up at her gentle, steady gaze. It's okay. Heroes make mistakes too. He blinked, confused. Even All Might makes mistakes. He asked, voice trembling. He was dressed in a homemade version of All Might's old Bronze Age costume, complete with a yellow cape stitched from an old blanket. She smiled. Yes, sweetheart. Even All Might had rough days in the beginning. He's brave and strong, but he's human too. Just like you. Sniffing, Izuku wiped his tears and stood tall. Don't worry, Mom. I'll protect you no matter what. You're the best mom in the whole world. He puffed out his chest, trying to sound just like All Might. She giggled and kissed his forehead. So, she said, what are we going to eat now, my hero? His stomach growled, and she laughed again, picking up the phone. Pizza. Not just one, two. Izuku's eyes sparkled. As she placed the order, he hugged her leg and beamed with joy. While they waited, they played together, filling the house with laughter. But inside, Inko was worried. Tomorrow was Izuku's quirk evaluation, and his father wouldn't be there. Hisashi Midoriya was a hard-working man, perhaps too hard-working. He feared his son wouldn't even remember him. When Izuku was born, Hisashi cried tears of joy. But in his eyes, something shifted that day. A heavy silence. A quiet pressure. He stayed for the first year. He was there when Izuku opened his eyes for the first time. But on his son's second birthday, everything changed. Inko, he said one night, voice low, I have to go. Our finances are slipping, and if I don't act now, Izuku's future will be at risk. Later, after putting Izuku to sleep, Inko followed him into the hallway. Her voice trembled. But Hisashi. Izuku needs you. I need you. Please don't leave. He pulled her into an embrace. He didn't want to go. But he had convinced himself there was no other choice. I'll send money. I'll do everything I can. I don't know when I'll be back, but I'm doing this for you both. Forgive me. A tear slid down his cheek. She held him as if trying to keep him from vanishing. Promise me you'll come back. Promise you won't leave Izuku alone. I swear on my life. The next morning, they had a special breakfast, one that felt like a celebration, though no one said why. Inko took pictures, father and son laughing, posing, making silly faces. She called them two peas in a pod. Afterward, Hisashi packed his things. Outside, the sky hung heavy and gray. At the door, he hugged Izuku tightly and ruffled his hair. Come back soon, Inko said, forcing a smile. Yeah. And we'll play together again. Izuku added. Hisashi smiled. He kissed Inko softly. In her eyes, he saw all the beauty he could never find in the world, not in magazines, not on screens, but in her heart. Then he stepped outside. And the moment the door closed behind him, his appearance shifted. His hair turned white as snow. His face changed, bone structure shifting in subtle but terrifying ways. He still looked like Hisashi. But he wasn't. The man now walking down the street was someone else entirely. The man known as All for One, had taken his place. Chapter 2, Beginning. Of problems All for One, also known as the symbol of evil and the embodiment of fear for countless enemies, left his home, heading farther away so that his wife, Inko, wouldn't see him. He knew she would be watching his departure, so he changed his clothes and dyed his hair to avoid being recognized. Smirking to himself, he reflected on how he had lived for over 2 centuries, killed thousands with his own hands, and kept all of Japan's heroes trembling for almost a decade, yet now, he was nervous in front of his wife, as fragile as glass. Love is a strange thing. You can be ruthless and power-hungry, striving for dems, but for the sake of love, for just 2 people, you begin to doubt yourself, wondering if your ideals are still right and whether the tiny piece of happiness you recently found might now be in jeopardy. Casting one last glance out the window, he picked up his suitcase and stepped out, telling himself everything would be all right. Don't worry. I'll keep my promise and come back safe and sound. Once he was far enough from home, he spoke his accomplice's name, and a dark purple portal opened before him. The Lord of Darkness stepped into it. Kurojiri, send me to the laboratory. A few seconds later, glowing yellow-gray eyes formed within the misty portal, not quite eyes, more like piercing lights in a fog. Yes, Mstr. Everything is ready. The doctor awaits you, said Kurogiri respectfully, his tone laced with fear. Kurogiri was, after all, a creation of All for One. With the help of. They were mere puppets in the hands of their Mstr. As All for One passed through the portal, his eyes met the sight of transparent capsules, each holding a different type of Nomu. Some were massive and clumsy, ideal for cannon fodder. Others were highly specialized, equipped with powerful quirks, strength, agility, regeneration, durability, and the ability to absorb a wide range of attacks, all to make them capable of enduring the wrath of the Lord of Darkness's enemies. I see you haven't wasted any time, my old friend, said All for One with satisfaction, examining the capsules filled with Nomu floating in thick, strange fluids. Dr. Garaki, a man devoid of compassion, oversaw all research in genetic engineering and quirk manipulation. The resources at his disposal were thanks solely to his Mstr, who allowed him to pursue his studies without limits. But everything had its price, in this case, an obedient army of Nomu to fulfill All for One's ambitions and heal the injuries left by his eternal nemesis, One for All, and its previous wielders. The last wielder was Toshinori Yagi, who chose the ridiculous hero name All Might. A man who had underestimated the Lord of Darkness. He should have died the first time they met in the ruins of a once great city. Yagi had looked at All for One with pride and a smug grin, believing in the strength of his quirk. This infuriated All for One, that his younger brother's power had been passed to someone else. All former users of One for All feared him. They avoided direct confrontation in hopes of survival, but the story always ended the same, the death of the quirk's bearer. And now, standing before him wasn't a seasoned warrior, but a reckless youth, who smiled proudly in the face of the Lord of Darkness. Rage consumed All for One. Someone dared to challenge him, with a smile. Blinded by fury, he lost control and composure, unleashing a barrage of stolen quirks, tentacles, beams, lasers, blades, but All Might dodged them all with confidence, counterattacking with one of his most powerful moves. Texas Smash. The strike was so powerful that it caused a massive collapse of nearby ruins within a 100-meter radius, leaving a deep crater. In that moment, All for One realized he had underestimated his opponent. Though the damage was manageable, his regeneration dealt with most of it, he now attacked with more calculation, while Yagi continued dodging. Ahahaha. So this is the monster who makes everyone tremble. You call yourself the Lord of Darkness. Ahahaha. All Might's laughter mocked him. He kept dodging attacks, pushing All for One to the edge. Honestly, you're nothing but a sad little boy playing villain. Ahahaha. Enraged by the insults, All for One's eyes became cold and calculating. Regaining control, he extended his palm toward All Might, charging up energy for a devastating blow. But just as he prepared to fire, he was struck from behind. The shot went wild, aimed into the air. How long have you been watching? Where the hell were you? Shouted Toshinori at his mentors, who had just arrived. They glared back fiercely. Now's not the time for questions, brat. Focus, like I taught you, said one, a man in a yellow-white hero suit, black mask covering his eyes. Toshi, hold him back. We'll attack from both flanks. We can't afford any mistakes, said the brunette in a white cloak, watching the enemy's figure standing amid flames, radiating menace. You really think the three of you can defeat me? An entire army of heroes has stood against me, where are they now? Where are your comrades? All for One mocked, tossing aside his torn jacket. A malicious grin stretched across his face. Detroit Smash, shouted All Might, lunging with another blow, but it was blocked. A force field surrounded All for One, and All Might's strongest punch couldn't break through. His shocked face was met only with a smirk. You don't belong here, kid. Get lost. Damage absorption. Mirror. Reflection. Air cannon. Force field. All for One absorbed the blow, redirected it, and sent it back with crushing force. All Might was hurled 500 meters away. But their strategy had worked. While he was distracted, two other heroes struck from both sides, hammering him with everything they had. Nana and Torino landed blow after blow, severely damaging the Lord of Darkness. But not willing to be a punching bag, he released a powerful energy blast, hurling them into buildings. They groaned in pain. No one had expected such a quirk. A red laser charged in All for One's hand, aiming at the symbol of peace. Rising from the rubble, All Might quickly dodged the beam. But in doing so, he realized too late that Shimura, his mentor, was still in the collapsing building. The laser sliced through concrete. The structure shook. All Might leapt to the 6th floor, grabbed Shimura, and jumped to safety. While he was rescuing her, Gran Torino tried to hold off All for One, but lacked the firepower to do real damage. Bored with the resistance, the villain unleashed another energy wave, throwing Torino aside. You thought you could stop me with these mosquito bites? Pathetic. A devilish smile curled on his lips as he looked down on them. Shimura, now recovered, stood beside her allies. You know, I thought 3 against 1 was unfair. Let me fix that. Behind him, dark portals opened. From them emerged Nomu, 10 in total, the maximum available. 5 of them were thin, with dark blue skin and sharp spikes, faster than any C-rank hero. The others had wings, multiple mutated eyes, and dark, swampy skin. Their beaks were filled with jagged teeth, and their claws could rip a person apart with ease. Aren't they appealing? Behold, my creations. With a simple command, the creatures lunged at the heroes. We're in deep trouble. Chapter 3, The Battle of Two Sides. You two will try to stop his creations, while I try to stop him. Nana soared into the air, leaving Gran Torino and All Might to fight the Nomu. All for One smirked at the scene and accepted Nana Shimura's challenge, rising into the sky. It's just you and me now, Nana Shimura. Your predecessors couldn't stop me. Do you really think you can defeat me with your power? A sinister aura began to emanate from the symbol of evil as crimson tentacles emerged from his back, trying to ensnare her. Nana skillfully dodged all the attacks. One of the tentacles nearly pierced her heart, but she narrowly avoided it using her quirk, levitation. Is that all you can do? Tentacles. Really? I expected more from you, All for One. Waiting for the right moment as he recharged his ability, Nana landed a powerful blow to his face, but he countered with an energy wave. What the teacher and the student have in common is their inability to stand against me. Let's see how you fare against this. Energy wave pyrokinesis explosive wave destruction vacuum cannon devastating will laser. The combination of several quirks required time to execute, but All for One was aiming to unleash a single, devastating long-range attack that would strike all his enemies at once. The blast was so fast that none of the 3 could react or dodge in time. The Nomu advanced, pushing the heroes back. Some were subdued, but the rest attacked with even greater ferocity, exhausting Gran Torino and All. I can't tremble. I can't be afraid. I won't give up as long as my heart beats. Forcing on his signature smile, he gritted his teeth and stood tall. Preparing for the approaching Nomu, he took a stance, gathering energy into his hand, and declared, Detroit Smash. All Might took down 2 Nomu with sheer striking power. The third had its legs torn off. It tried to regenerate, but the symbol of peace didn't give it the chance. He smashed its head with one blow, staining his boots. Without pause, he rushed to aid his mentors, but that moment was stolen. He felt it, his enemy's presence, steadily approaching, surveying the ruined landscape. If I don't stop him, he'll reach the others. I must hold him off until they recover. Standing firm, he began to form a plan, but All for One interrupted his thoughts, offering a deal. You can't stand against me, fool. In a theatrical gesture, he extended his hand in a mock bargain. I propose a deal. You give me one for all, and in return, I'll spare your life and, so be it, the lives of your mentors. Do you agree? You won't get a second chance, boy. He spoke politely, but All Might's expression hardened, the smile fading from his face. Fueled by rage, the young All Might raised his middle finger. Here's what I think of your deal. I will never, ever bargain with you, All for One. He took a stance, locking eyes with his enemy, clenching his fist and gathering all his energy. I will never bow to you or any of my enemies because I am All Might. Lightning sparked around his right hand. All Might knew, this strike, if it didn't kill him, would surely break his arm. Pushing beyond his limits, his body radiated power he hadn't felt in years. Bones ached, ready to snap, but the symbol of peace endured it, for one final blow. So, you've chosen to repay my mercy with arrogance. Very well. You'll beg for death when I'm done with you, All for One growled, channeling the power of dozens of enhancement quirks into his left arm. Kinetic enhancement, destructive force, will of destruction, muscle strength, metallic coating, enhanced regeneration, Cerberus fury, physical power enhancement, energy enhancement. His arm swelled grotesquely from the sheer number of quirks, tearing his white shirt apart. With his other hand, he ripped away the tattered remains of his shirt, revealing his scarred torso. And what will you do now, hero? Fueled by fury and power, All Might leapt toward him, channeling so much energy into his legs that they broke upon impact with All for One's force. Locking eyes with him, he shouted, One for all, 110%. United States of Smash. Plus Ultra Tra. Their fists collided in a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave obliterated the surroundings, creating a massive crater and leveling buildings. Gran Torino and Nana, still recovering from the earlier laser attack, regained consciousness. As Nana looked around, she asked, Where is Toshinori, Torino? He's fighting All for One. We have to get there. Torino pointed to the street, where they saw All Might unleashing all his power against the villain. Toshinori. The two professional heroes rushed to help him, but it was too late. Nothing could stop him now, not even himself. The shockwave swept Nana and Sorahiko off their feet, slamming them into the pavement. The ground trembled, a zero-magnitude quake, and a colossal dust cloud rose, obscuring everything in sight. At the epicenter lay the young All Might, his right arm and both legs broken. Groaning in pain, he couldn't see his opponent, but he felt his sinister aura. He tried to rise, but his body refused to respond, all his strength had gone into that one final strike. Whether it had been enough remained a mystery. Gritting his teeth, he rolled onto his stomach and began to crawl, dragging himself through the dust with his intact left arm. He didn't know where his mentors were, only that he hoped they were safe. Slowly, the smoke cleared. A silhouette emerged. It wasn't human, not yet. A skeleton, slowly growing muscle and flesh, regenerating with a healing quirk. His vocal cords were destroyed, leaving him mute. Muscles wrapped around bones, eyes slowly formed in empty sockets, skin began to grow. No, he couldn't have survived that. No. That's impossible, Yagi thought. He tried to stand, but his broken body wouldn't move. All for One, slowly regenerating, approached his fallen foe, delighted and disgusted by the smile still on All Might's face. I must admit, I underestimated you. You truly impressed me, young man. You're either very brave or very foolish. For your bravery, I'll grant you a quick death. To be continued. Chapter 4, Beginning of Hatred. Before you stop breathing, do you have any wishes? This sentence seemed meaningless, but AFO understood, the consequences of his opponent's final blow were now taking their toll. It was difficult for him to stay on his feet and keep his attention on the enemy, despite the sharp pain radiating through his chest and organs. At the same time, Toshinori thought he had lost this battle. He hadn't managed to defeat his mentor's archenemy. No, this shouldn't have happened. How could I lose like this? I never imagined I'd fail. I'm a hero, I can't fall into despair. If I had more power, I could have beaten him. Get up, Toshinori, come on, the young All Might berated himself internally. But he couldn't. He couldn't protect others. He couldn't defeat the enemy. He was overwhelmed with despair and afraid of his own thoughts. Yet, shaking off the negativity, he lifted his gaze to meet the eyes of the symbol of evil. You were not bad in battle, but do you know what sets me apart from you? All Might asked a question that even piqued AFO's interest. But it was all meaningless. Still, he let the hero speak. What difference would a few more minutes make to a man about to die? And what is that? All Might smiled and answered, I fought with people who believe in me. I will never be alone. Your army and minions are bound by fear. Once they stop fearing you, they'll tear you apart like wild dogs. Provoking AFO's anger, Toshinori laughed like a madman. Nothing could stop him now, these were the final moments of his life. If I'm going to die, I'd rather die with a smile on my face. All Might shouted with all the strength left in him. All for One, unfazed, moved toward All Might, intent on taking his younger brother's quirk. Just as his hand nearly touched All Might's head, a powerful kick from Gran Torino struck AFO at high speed, throwing him back nearly 100 meters. Frustration and irritation began to take over, this battle had gone on longer than he'd anticipated. Rising to his feet, he saw 3 irritating figures in colorful clothes standing before him. Toshinori, can you get up? Gran Torino asked sarcastically, despite his own broken legs. But they were quickly distracted by an explosion near the battlefield center. All for One began to levitate, and those familiar purple portals appeared once again. I can't even move. I used my most powerful attack, it broke my arms and legs. But at least I weakened him. Now he's not as strong as before. All Might winced from the pain as he was lifted. He didn't understand why, until it dawned on him. Gran Torino's eyes filled with tears, and seeing this, All Might asked himself, where's my mentor, Nana Shimura? They began to fly, but All Might's thoughts were consumed with panic for his mentor, who was nowhere in sight. Where is Shimura-san, Gran Torino? Where is she? All Might shouted desperately. But he was helpless. The only answer was a pitiful reply from his mentor, I'm sorry, Toshinori. With all the strength they could muster, they continued to flee. All Might began to cry out and scream when he saw his mentor standing below, staring defiantly at All for One. Sorahiko, get Toshinori out of here. I'll hold him off as best I can. Nana's breathing was labored. She had been impaled by rebar through her stomach and liver. Even if she escaped, she'd bleed out before reaching medical help. Her knees trembled, and her breath was uneven. Behind her, All for One summoned dozens of Nomu, too many for the current heroes to handle. Nana stood and pointed at All Might. Her voice, though quiet, reached even from 20 meters away. Toshinori, you are next. The ground beneath Gran Torino vanished, and both MSTR and student soared into the air. All Might tried to resist, but he was powerless. All he could do was scream. Sensei, no. No and oh. With his still functioning hand, he struck Gran Torino's back, but the older hero no longer reacted. He had lost a comrade, an ally, a friend. Tears streamed down his face as he spoke. Nana said we should go. She bought us time. But All Might refused to accept it. He wanted to help her. He screamed again, his voice filled with grief. We have to help her. We can't leave her alone with him. She will die. Gran Torino didn't respond. He had already come to terms with the loss, flying silently away with Toshinori. Nana watched them disappear into the sky. For the last time, she smiled at All for One. Around him, a new army of stronger Nomu had gathered. It's just you and me, Nana. Not even a team of heroes could stop me. What makes you think you can? Do you hope that cocky brat will stop me? Ahaha, he laughed, pointing at her. Then, he gave the command. Bring me her head. The Nomu attacked like rabid beasts. Nana did her best to fight back. She targeted their brains, their weakness, and managed to defeat 5. But then a blow to her face sent her flying. She could no longer endure. Collapsing, she fell to the ground, her life fading away. One Nomu, like a loyal dog, brought her head to its MSTR. The humanoid creature knelt, offering the trophy. Excellent work. Grabbing her by her long black hair, AFO laughed maniacally, staring into her lifeless eyes. Then, he threw it to the ground, shattering it into pieces, his victory complete. Behind him, a purple portal opened. MSTR, you need urgent medical attention. I will transport you to Dr. Garaki. The portal shifted coordinates, opening a path to the doctor's lab. All for One said nothing. Silently, he stepped into the portal, holding his chest. MSTR, are you alright? The doctor asked, watching the Noma capsule nervously. I'm fine, old friend. I just remembered the last time I came here injured like this. Gazing grimly at the doctor, AFO realized it was time to end his affairs and focus on raising his son, Izuku. All Might still hunted him, obsessed with revenge. But in his current state, he couldn't win. He needed an army, and for that, he turned to Dr. Garaki. What is my current condition, doctor? All for One asked, concerned. He had hidden his coughing from Izuku and Inko so as not to worry them. Your condition is better than a few years ago, but still far from full recovery. I'm trying everything I can, but in all these years of studying your quirk, I've made little progress. I'm sorry. The doctor lowered his head. All for One, Hisashi Shigaraki, had been the first to recognize his genius when others mocked him. For that, Garaki owed him everything. There's no need to despair. You are doing something, unlike many others, All for One replied, watching the doctor closely. In his eyes, he saw the truth the doctor had been hiding. Is something wrong? Actually, there is a way to restore your former power. To be continued. Chapter 5, The Day That Will Change Everything. Present time. After several hours of playing games with his mother, the young boy destined to embody the true essence of heroism was exhausted and ready for bed. His mother understood this and gently tried to put Izuku to sleep. But with his characteristic stubbornness, he insisted that evil never sleeps or rests. Climbing onto the couch and striking a heroic pose, he solemnly declared, deliberately deepening his voice to sound like All Might. Fear not, villain. For I am the hero who fights day and night, in the sky and on the sea. I fear neither fire nor darkness. I fear no one. Hearing his dramatic proclamation, Inko beamed with pride, her heart swelling with joy, and a tear of happiness slipped from her eye. Izuku paused, deep in thought. He still hadn't decided on a name for his hero persona or how he wanted to present himself to the world. Watching her son stand so seriously on the couch, hand on his chin and brow furrowed in contemplation, Inko couldn't help but tease her aspiring little hero. What kind of hero isn't even afraid of his own mother? She asked theatrically, placing the back of her hand against her forehead and closing her eyes with exaggerated flair. "Mom. Don't interrupt," he cried. "How can I be a real hero if I don't even have my own superhero society to make me known around the world?" As Inko chuckled at his response, she considered asking a delicate question: was Izuku ready to inherit his father's quirk? He hadn't seen his father since he was 2 years old and likely barely remembered him. Maybe he even thought Hisashi had abandoned them. Taking a deep breath, she prepared to speak, but Izuku suddenly caught her attention again. "I'm not afraid of you, Mom. I'm afraid you'll cry. So, from this moment on, I promise to protect the best smile in the world, yours." That was it. The dam broke, and Inko burst into tears of joy. But Izuku didn't understand why she was crying, only that she was crying. He immediately slid off the couch, ran to her, and hugged her leg tightly. "Mom. Who made you cry? Tell me his name and I'll annihilate him." Tears streamed freely down Inko's cheeks, soaking into her clothes and even staining the small All Might costume her son proudly wore. Kneeling to meet him at eye level, she wrapped her arms around the stunned boy. Izuku returned the embrace, clinging to her neck with his little arms, his wide eyes filled with concern. Almost managing to contain her sobs, Inko smiled through her tears and whispered, "Izuku, those were the kindest words anyone has ever said to me." Still sniffling, she continued to comfort him. "No one has ever spoken to me like that before. Not even your father's sweet words come close. I'll remember this for the rest of my life." She gently leaned back and looked into her son's teary but sparkling eyes. "Mom, what kind of hero would I be if I let you cry? I have to be the hero who protects your smile, and, happiness," he added, stumbling over the last word he had only recently learned. But it didn't matter. Even if he had lost his voice, Izuku's very presence brought her happiness. Resting her head on his shoulder, she said the words that would ignite a fire in her son's heart, "My son, it doesn't matter whether the world calls you a hero or not. To me, you already are one, my hero. No, my superhero." Overwhelmed, Izuku let go of his mother and burst into happy energy, racing around the apartment in glee. His joy was so bright, it felt as though it could light the darkest corners of the world. Inko's tears turned into a carefree, loving smile as she watched her 4-year-old hero. Curious, she called out to him mid-spin, "Izuku, have you thought of your hero name yet?" He stopped, looked at her with dramatic seriousness, and she suddenly felt a small twinge of anxiety at what her son might say. Climbing onto the table to appear taller than his mother, though he only barely reached her shoulder even while standing on a chair, Izuku cleared his throat dramatically. "Ahem. He seeks neither fame nor recognition. His path lies through lonely roads, where storms scatter the shadows. Thunder follows in his footsteps. Rain whispers with every move, as if the storm itself has chosen him as its relentless face. I am the one who will protect and show compassion to all. My name is Knight of the Storm." Inko's jaw dropped. How could a 4-year-old come up with something so poetic? She felt an overwhelming sense of pride. This was truly a performance. Her thoughts drifted to Hisashi, who once had a flair for dramatic, poetic speeches when courting her. Like father, like son, she thought with a bittersweet smile. She still held out hope that Hisashi might return one day. He'd been gone for almost 2 years, but he sent enough money to cover all expenses, including the pricey collectible hero figurines she bought for Izuku. She didn't need to work and could spend every day with her green-haired bundle of joy, who made her feel alive. Thinking of Hisashi, Inko decided to change the subject slightly to avoid upsetting her son. "Izuku, sweetie, what kind of quirk would you like to have?" "I want a quirk with elemental powers. Like fire, or lightning. Or a superpower like All Might's. So I can give people hope and save them from villains," he exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement. Smiling, Inko asked one more question. "Okay, then tell me, Izuku, if you could choose between my quirk and your father's quirk, which would you pick?" "Yours, of course," he said without hesitation. "It's so cool. You can pull objects, lift people, you can do so many cool things, Mom." Inko's heart swelled with pride, and a little sadness. Izuku's answer showed how deeply he admired and loved her, but it also made her realize how distant he felt from his father. "But Izuku, why not your father's quirk? I think it's strong too. He can breathe fire. He can take down villains with a single breath, while I have to use my hands to activate my quirk." Izuku paused thoughtfully before answering. "Yeah, it's cool, but I've never seen him use it. And what if he has a sore throat? Then he can't fight properly." Inko was both impressed and unnerved. How could her son be so clever at only 4 years old? He was growing up so fast. Evening settled over the city. The streets were quiet, the silence broken only by the occasional hum of passing cars. The moonlight cast a soft glow across the walls of Izuku's room, where he lay under his blanket. Inko sat at the edge of his bed, reading the final lines of a fairy tale. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Wow, Mom, that was the best story you've ever read, Izuku whispered, not wanting to disturb the quiet magic of the moment with his usual All Might-style shouts. Yes, sweetie, I liked it too. Now it's time to sleep. Tomorrow is a big day, your first real step toward becoming a hero, Inko said, gently stroking his unruly hair. Okay, Mom. We'll get up early tomorrow, Izuku replied, smiling sleepily. She tucked the blanket around him and kissed his forehead, hugging him warmly. I love you too, Mom, he murmured, hugging her back. They held each other for 2 full minutes before Inko stood up and softly closed the door. Good night, my son, she whispered, her voice warm and tender. Lying in bed, Izuku glanced at the All Might poster on the wall. The hero's proud gaze met his own. Don't worry, All Might. I promise, I'll become a hero like no one has ever seen before. You'll be proud of me. With that vow, Izuku closed his eyes and drifted off into a peaceful sleep, ready to meet the important day that awaited him. To be continued, Chapter 6, Anticipation of a Great Event. After closing the door to the room, Inko began cleaning the kitchen and living room after spending time playing with Izuku. As she worked, her mind wandered. She wondered what kind of quirk her son would inherit. He was doing everything he could to become a hero, but that dream came with risks, serious ones. Being a hero meant living with danger. Every day, you became a target for villains. And there were no guarantees. You might not survive until tomorrow. What frightened Inko the most wasn't the battles or the villains, it was the thought that Izuku's future might be stolen by the very path he idolized. That his personal life, his relationships with his mother and father, could fade into the background. That one day, when he had his own family and children, he wouldn't have the time or strength to truly be there for them. Yes, the life of a hero could be full of excitement and good pay, but how many heroes actually live to old age? Not many. Most didn't retire with honor, they were forgotten, worn out, or lost in the line of duty. And what scared her even more was the loneliness. That Izuku might lose sight of the people around him, become distant, obsessed with hero work, and end up isolated. After all, who needs an aging, injured hero, no matter how powerful, when there's a younger graduate with a new flashy quirk taking the spotlight? That was the ugly truth behind the dazzling world of heroism. It all looked so bright, costumes, speeches, victory poses. But no one spoke about the burnout, broken families, or shattered health. And this terrified Inko. What if her son followed that same tragic path? He deserved better. She had seen how his eyes lit up when heroes appeared on TV, how he memorized their moves and filled his notebooks with stats and analysis. But was he truly meant for such a dangerous life? With his brilliant mind, he could change the world in a different way, one just as valuable, just as heroic. Brrr, Inko's phone vibrated for the second time. Lost in her thoughts, she hadn't even noticed the first buzz. As she walked to the table, she allowed herself a small flicker of hope. Maybe it's Hisashi, maybe he's finally coming home. Maybe he'll say, Inko, I'm coming back. Wait for me and Izuku, I'll be there in an hour. But it wasn't Hisashi. Instead, the screen showed a familiar contact name, Explosive Wheat. It was her childhood friend, Mitsuki Bakugo. She picked up the phone and held it to her ear. Hello, Izuku Midoriya speaking, she answered softly. Laughter rang from the other end. Oh, come on, Izuku. Since when did we start talking like strangers? We've known each other since we were kids, Mitsuki's playful voice responded. Izuku chuckled, already feeling better. Sorry, force of habit. How are you? It's pretty late, Mitsuki glanced at the clock, 11:17 p.m. I know. Sorry for calling this late, I just really needed to talk to you, Mitsuki admitted after a brief pause. Is everything okay? You sound serious. I haven't heard you like this since you fell for Masaru, Inko said, concern creeping into her voice. Mitsuki laughed. You're still the same, too trusting and way too honest. That's why I adore you. The mood between them softened, like old times. Stop flattering me, Mitsuki. Inko blushed and stammered, her voice full of warmth. All right. So how's Izuku doing? Mitsuki asked, deliberately avoiding any mention of Hisashi. Great. I just put him to bed. Tomorrow we're going to the doctor to check his quirk. You should have seen how excited he was, running around pretending to be All Might. He couldn't stop smiling. Inko paused, her own smile lingering. As for me, I feel like the happiest woman in the world having him by my side. What about Katsuki? And the modeling agency? I heard things are going well. They are, mostly. Though, Mitsuki sighed. We had a bit of a disaster. One of those flashy heroes released an energy pulse during a fight with a villain, right near our building. Half our equipment was fried. Thankfully, the hero agency paid for the damages. If it weren't for Masaru calming me down, I swear I would have blown up the whole office. Inko laughed, covering her mouth. If Masaru weren't around, I'm pretty sure you'd blow up every passerby on the street. Mitsuki grinned. You're not wrong. Anyway, get this, I was modeling a new dress, pretty pricey, too, and some old creep in the audience offered to buy me. Like, right there on stage. Inko gasped. Mitsuki continued. I wanted to scream that I wasn't some cheap prostitute and tell him where to shove his dirty money. But Masaru stepped in. He stopped the photo shoot, grabbed the guy by the collar, and tossed him out. Just like that. He did. Inko exclaimed, eyes wide. With pride for her friend's husband. Oh, you should have seen it. Everyone thinks Masaru's the quiet one, but when it counts, he's the real beast. I may be the loudmouth, but he's the one people shouldn't mess with. And Katsuki? Inko asked, still smiling. Oh, that little firecracker finally awakened his quirk. A mix of mine and Masaru's. He blew up half our furniture. I yelled at him, but he just shouted back, kids grow up so fast, oh my god, like he was the parent. Mitsuki groaned. Now he's all, I'm gonna be better than All Might. These kids and their heroes, that's okay, Inko replied gently. It's good that they have dreams. They'll grow and figure things out. It's all part of being a kid. You're right, as always. No argument from me, Mitsuki said, letting out a dramatic yawn. Alright, let's wrap this up. Call me tomorrow after the test, I want to know what Izuku gets. Of course. Good night, Mitsuki. Good night, Inko. Sending you a hug. Inko set the phone down and lay on the couch, her green hair fanning out around her. Her eyes fluttered closed. The ceiling faded into blackness as sleep pulled her into the realm of dreams. The next day two figures sat in the waiting area outside the doctor's office, a little green-haired boy holding an All Might figurine, and a slender woman with long hair and striking features. Izuku was jittery, fidgeting, and whining about the wait. It's taking forever. I thought it'd be more exciting, he grumbled. Mrs. Midoriya. You and your son may come in, a kind voice said. The doctor was a middle-aged man with a heteromorphic quirk, his head resembled a brown toy dinosaur. Most children were fascinated by his appearance, and he had become a favorite among them. Izuku's eyes lit up with wonder. Please, have a seat. We'll begin the quirk test now. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes, the doctor said gently. Izuku nearly trembled with anticipation. His heart pounded. He was moments away from his dream. This is it. I'll never forget this day, it'll be the best day of my life. Just wait, All Might. If I can't become your successor, then I'll be the one who surpasses you. He didn't just feel excited, he was ready to explode with it. Yes, this would be the beginning of his greatest triumph. To be continued. Chapter 7, Broken Goals. Inko sat beside her son, Izuku, gently rubbing his back in an effort to soothe his typically sensitive and anxious nature. Izuku, if you calm down just a little, we'll get through this. Please, try not to do anything rash. Yet despite the fear, he summoned his courage, thinking of All Might, the symbol of peace, who always faced danger with a smile and unshakable resolve. Well then, let's begin, the doctor said in a professional tone. I'll wrap a pressure sensor around your arm. This helps us determine your heart activity and may give us a hint if your quirk has manifested. Although, I must warn you, it's not a precise method. There's only about a 15% chance of detection, he explained. With practiced hands, the doctor removed adhesive strips and placed them gently around Izuku's bicep. As he activated the device, it tightened, making the boy flinch slightly from the pressure. He winced but endured it, the machine emitting a steady series of beeping sounds. Inko watched with concern, eyes fixed on the screen. Don't worry, the doctor finally said. Your son's heart activity is perfectly normal, and there's no sign of any heart condition. It's also completely normal that the machine didn't detect a quirk. This test is only preliminary. He smiled and carefully removed the sensor from Izuku's arm, setting it aside. Then, with a kind look, he added, everything will be all right. Children often find comfort in a warm smile, and Inko hoped that would ease her son's nerves. He stood and walked to a cabinet, retrieving a syringe and alcohol swabs. After disinfecting the area, he located a suitable vein on the first try and inserted the needle with care. Izuku felt a sharp prick and a ticklish sensation travel through his arm, but he didn't cry. Instead, he smiled through the discomfort, bravely enduring it. Please hold this cotton ball over the injection site, the doctor instructed Inko. She quickly complied, gently pressing it to her son's arm. Well done, young man. You're very brave. With courage like that, I have no doubt you'll become a hero, the doctor praised, igniting a spark in Izuku's eyes. He started to realize that in today's quirk-dominated society, a child born without a quirk might never be able to become a hero. Though he tried to keep smiling, Inko noticed something had changed, the cheerful glow on his face had faded. The most painful part was yet to come, the doctor still hadn't given a final answer, and Inko feared what it might be. Izuku continued to smile, holding on to the doctor's earlier praise. But instead of confirmation, the doctor spoke again. I'd like to run one final test, he said. It's an X-ray scan to check for the presence or absence of an additional joint in the pinky toe, a common indicator of quirklessness. He looked to Inko. I'll proceed only with your consent. Inko nodded, trying to steady her trembling hands. She squeezed Izuku's palm gently and helped him lie on the scanning table. Stay still, honey. This is the last test. After this, we'll know for sure if you're more like me or your father, she said with a soft smile. Her words gave Izuku the push he needed to stay brave. Now lie back, and don't move. It'll be over quickly, I promise, the doctor said. Izuku settled into the machine, which began to scan his skeletal structure. Everything okay, sweetie? Inko asked. Yeah, Mom. It's just, really bright in here. And the machine's making weird noises, Izuku replied. Relieved, Inko waited patiently as the machine completed its task. The doctor, however, sat frozen in front of the screen, eyes wide with disbelief. What is this? He thought. It's impossible. A case like this is almost unheard of. 20 minutes had passed, and the doctor still hadn't said a word. He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Dr. Akira wasn't good at hiding things. Whenever he lied, his nose itched and his right eye twitched, due to a minor side effect of his shape-shifting quirk. Desperately trying to delay the inevitable, he asked, if you don't mind, what quirks do you and your husband possess? Inko reached across the table and levitated a pen slightly with her telekinesis. I have a weak telekinesis quirk. My husband could breathe fire, she answered, recalling Hitoshi's ability. She had always hoped Izuku would inherit his father's quirk, especially since he had been unusually thirsty that morning. But clearly, that hope was fading. Dr. Akira, still wearing his practiced smile, looked at Izuku with sadness in his heart. He could see how much this boy dreamed of being a hero. Just as he opened his mouth to speak the truth, the door burst open. Dad, Dad. He's here. The doctor's here, cried a cheerful 4-year-old girl with short blue hair and sparkling topaz eyes. Oh, hello there, she said brightly. Izuku blinked, surprised. It was the first time he had seen someone his age. The girl's presence instantly captivated him. She ran up and bombarded him with questions. Wow! How does your hair grow like that? Is it easy to take care of? Were you born with green hair, or did you dye it? Overwhelmed but smiling, Izuku responded kindly, his golden smile lighting up his face. This unexpected encounter bloomed into his first real friendship with a girl. Inko and the doctor watched them, momentarily forgetting the tension. How adorable. Inko thought. My baby's talking to a girl. Hisashi, you have to see this. Meanwhile, the girl's father entered, clearly exasperated. Nijire, what are you doing? You can't just barge in. People are waiting for test results. I'm so sorry, said Mr. Hado, bowing slightly. We're here for a quirk assessment too. My daughter can be energetic. Before leaving, the girl turned to Izuku and beamed. My name's Nijire Hado. Nice to meet you, Hado-san. I'm Izuku Midoriya, he replied, waving as the door closed. Once silence returned, Dr. Akira took a deep breath. Mrs. Midoriya, he said solemnly, according to all the analyses, your son has not inherited either of your quirks. In fact. He hesitated. Inko's heart raced. Izuku clutched a small All Might figurine in his hand. I'm sorry to say this, but your son is quirkless. The words hit Izuku like a lightning bolt. His figurine slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the floor. The sparkle in his eyes dimmed, not extinguished, but dulled. Chapter 8, Acceptance of Reality. This is impossible. That can't be. Inko cried out, her voice trembling with disbelief. Panic gripped her heart, her lips quivering as her heartbeat thundered like it was trying to tear through her chest. With tear-filled eyes, she looked at Dr. Akira, desperately searching for any sign that he was lying, but his expression was firm, unwavering. Her gaze slowly shifted to Izuku, who stood frozen like a statue, his wide eyes locked on the doctor's white coat. His gaze turned hollow, filled with a chasm of despair. Time itself seemed to stop around him. His fingers loosened. The All Might figurine slipped from his hands and fell to the ground with a loud crash, breaking the heavy silence that blanketed the room. No one dared to speak. Not a word was uttered, not even to comfort the green-haired boy, whose entire body radiated shock. Izuku was pulled from his daze by the relentless ticking of the wall clock, each tick echoing in his mind like a cruel reminder of time moving forward without mercy. He lowered his gaze to the floor, where the broken figurine lay. It stared up at him with lifeless eyes, and the once inspiring smile of the symbol of peace now felt like mockery. If it had been the real All Might instead of just a toy, Izuku imagined he would say, I'm sorry, young man, but you cannot be a hero without a quirk. You are simply unworthy. Accept your place before it's too late to realize it. Dark thoughts clouded Izuku's mind. He imagined All Might laughing at him for being quirkless. But deep inside, he knew, All Might would never say that. Would he? Suddenly, it felt like the figurine was crawling toward him, inch by inch, drawn by an invisible force. The distance between them shrank with each heartbeat. The voice behind the figurine's smile grew louder, harsher, no. Unworthy. Unworthy. Those words rang in his head like a curse. Louder and louder, until they were silenced by his mother's gentle voice. She knelt beside him and placed the figurine back into his hands. "Sweetheart, are you okay? If you're not feeling well, we can go home," Inko said softly, noticing how limp his grip had become. Izuku stared blankly at the doctor. Dr. Akira, noticing the weight of Izuku's gaze, finally spoke again. A pang of guilt pierced his heart. He knew he had just shattered a child's dream. "Sometimes, the impossible really is just impossible," the doctor said as he pressed a button, revealing an X-ray of Izuku's leg and fingers. To an average person, it looked normal. But to a medical professional, it was a devastating confirmation. "Your son is missing the additional joint that all people with quirks have. He was born without it. He doesn't have a quirk." The word struck like a hammer to both mother and son. Their hopeful day had turned into a waking nightmare. For Izuku, it was soul-crushing. The path to becoming a hero, the path he had dreamed of his entire life, had been slammed shut. "I also need to warn you," the doctor continued. "Your son may face discrimination. While only 2% of the global population is quirkless, here in Japan that number is higher, around 7%. He bowed his head slightly. "I'm truly sorry." With each word, Izuku's world darkened, yet somewhere, buried deep within him, a small flame still flickered. A question that had haunted him now rose to the surface. What about people whose quirks awakened late? Izuku asked, a spark of hope lighting up his emerald eyes. He managed a faint smile. The doctor met his gaze. But what he said next extinguished that fragile hope. "That's a good question. Yes, medicine has recorded rare cases of late quirk development, often due to dormant genes or highly specific activation conditions. We call it a special quirk awakening condition." Both Inko and Izuku clung to the possibility. Even if his quirk hadn't appeared yet, maybe it would someday. But the next words shattered everything. "But not in your case." Izuku's lips parted, but only a whisper escaped, "What?" Dr. Akira's expression became grim. "It occurs in less than 1% of cases. In your case, it makes quirk awakening impossible." He opened his mouth to explain further, but Izuku's sobs cut him off. Inko reached out to comfort him, but he couldn't hear her anymore. The tears came harder now, streaming down his cheeks, dripping from his chin. His chest heaved with every breath. Snot mixed with tears. Salt clung to his lips. His mother wiped his face, but it was no use. The pain was deeper than skin. On the other side of the door, Nijire listened. Her father had pulled her out of the room earlier, but curiosity brought her back. She pressed her ear against the door. She hadn't heard Izuku's voice once. Only the doctor's, and his mother's. Then came crying. But not the kind from a shot or scrape, no, this was real. Deep. Raw. The sobbing she recognized from the times her own mother cried uncontrollably. And then she heard it. "Son, don't cry. Everything will be all right. Heroes don't cry, remember." Inko tried to soothe him. But those words pushed him over the edge. "Mom. What kind of hero am I if I don't even have a quirk?" Inko froze. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought them back. Nijire couldn't. Acting on pure instinct, she burst through the door. She found Izuku huddled in his mother's arms. Without hesitation, she ran to him and hugged him tightly. Inko looked up, surprised to see the little girl who had barged in earlier now holding her son with such compassion. Nijire didn't hold back. "Izuku. What happened? Why are you crying? Are you hurt? Did something happen?" She bombarded him with questions. Inko gently let him go so Nijire could embrace him more comfortably. "Nijire, I. Izuku stammered, still sobbing as he buried his face in her shoulder. Nijire stroked his back gently. Let's get out of here, she whispered. Staying here will only make you feel worse. Izuku nodded. His tear-filled eyes opened, noticing how damp her dress was from his tears. She smiled warmly at him. Then, without a second thought, she took his hand and led him out of the suffocating room. They sat outside, by the chairs near the door, and talked, about anything and everything. Bit by bit, the darkness inside Izuku began to lift. Back in the room, the door hadn't fully closed. Through the gap, they overheard Inko's quiet voice. Doctor, is there anything we can do? Anything at all. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Dr. Akira shook his head solemnly. I wish I could say yes, but, no. There's nothing medicine can do in this situation. I'm truly sorry. He paused, then added, but there's something else you should know. Inko tensed. What? How is that possible? Due to his mutation, both quirked and quirkless, if anyone discovered this mutation, what might they do? Is there anything else I need to know? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. The doctor sighed. No. That's all. I'm sorry. But I need to be honest. Your son will never become a hero. With his condition, he is unfit. Please, try to help him find another path in life. But unknown to them, Izuku had heard every word. And in that moment, his soul collapsed, like a star going cold and dark, leaving only silence inside. To be continued. Chapter 9, Nijire Hado. Izuku had lost his voice. His dream had once been accompanied by words like, you can do it. Come on, hero. Forward, for the glory of altruism. Every person can be a hero. But now everything had changed. Those words of support felt like burning coals, untouchable and painful. If you dared to hold them, you'd get burned. In the corners of young Midoriya's mind, other words began to flash, words that were true, yet so painful they shattered his heart, just like his dream, into thousands of tiny shards too fragile to piece together. Quirkless. Unworthy. Underdeveloped. You can't become a hero without a quirk. The words echoed endlessly in his mind. Unable to bear the weight of the migraine they caused, Izuku let out a heavy sigh, drawing the curious and concerned gaze of Nijire. She noticed his tears and, unable to restrain her curiosity or find the right words, asked bluntly why he had lowered his head, avoiding her gaze. Nijire, I am quirkless. Nijire was surprised. She had never met anyone without a quirk before. All she knew was that quirkless people were a discriminated minority. Most older Japanese citizens were quirkless, but even among them, it was rare. Meeting a child without a quirk was like seeing a global celebrity in a tiny village. But it didn't matter. Nijire didn't care whether Izuku had a quirk. For the first time, he spoke to her not like a weirdo, but as an equal. The main difficulty with communicating with Nijire was her excessive curiosity. Sometimes it made people uncomfortable, as she tended to cross personal boundaries. Yet this time, even bursting into the room and seeing Izuku like that didn't faze her. On the contrary, it made her smile and see him as a potential friend, something she'd been missing since elementary school. After such an unusual introduction, Nijire had no intention of abandoning a friend just because he didn't have a quirk. So what? I believe what makes someone a hero isn't their quirk, but their heart, Izuku, Nijire said cheerfully, causing Izuku to raise his head. Her words pierced the darkness of his doubt like a ray of hope. Inspired, Izuku wanted her to go on, but didn't dare ask. He simply needed to know if she truly meant it. Is it true that you really think that about me? Warmth filled his chest, and Nijire's freckled face turned red. She giggled. I really think so, silly. And I'd love to be your friend, maybe even your best friend. She said brightly. Izuku gave her a golden smile, the kind that brings happiness to everyone who sees it. Nijire was no exception. They talked and laughed, enjoying each other's company. Izuku shared stories about heroes and how cool they were, while Nijire listened eagerly, absorbing his enthusiasm. Not wanting to stay quiet, she responded with funny stories of her own. They made Izuku trust her more. She was silly sometimes, but it was fun being around her. Suddenly, a hand touched Izuku's shoulder. He turned to see his mother standing there, her expression sad and disappointed. It contrasted sharply with the bright mood he shared with Nijire. "Ah, I see you've made a new friend, Nijire," said a man with azure hair, smiling warmly. He took Nijire's hand and led her from the chair, heading toward the doctor's office. "Yes, Dad. His name's Izuku, and he's really cool," Nijire said, beaming with her full set of milk teeth. Dr. Akira appeared in the doorway, calling them in. "Mr. Hado, please come in," he gestured. Nijire looked back at Izuku with pleading eyes, hoping he wouldn't leave. Inko stood nearby, holding a folder with test results. She called her son, but he said something she never expected. "Mom. Wait. Let's wait for Nijire-san. We should wait for her." Inko gave him a demonstrative smile, trying to forget what had happened 5 minutes earlier, and sat down next to him. To cheer him up, Nijire added, "Thank you, Izuku. I promise my exam will be quick, and then we can play together." Feeling proud, Nijire entered the office, and her father closed the door behind them. While they were gone, Inko spoke about Nijire and how sweet she was, now a friend to her son. Inko felt proud that, despite the painful truth Izuku had learned, he still smiled through the pain. She knew that quirkless children often lacked friends, and she feared Izuku might be alone for a long time. But now he had a friend, or rather, a friend had found him. Friends made in childhood often become lifelong companions, and Inko promised herself she would do everything to preserve this connection. Izuku needed more than just her support, he needed Nijire's too. 10 minutes later, Nijire didn't just step out of the office, she burst out. She scanned the hallway, spotted Izuku sitting a short distance away, and ran toward him. Behind her, her father's exasperated voice could be heard, grumbling about her behavior, though he knew there was no changing her enthusiastic nature. "Izuku! Izuku!" Nijire shouted, hurrying to him. Izuku stood up and ran to meet her. Now he was infected by her curiosity, it was just as contagious as his smile. "Nijire, did they tell you what your quirk is? Is it cool? Can you show me? What kind of quirk is it?" The rapid-fire question stunned her for a moment, but she quickly recovered and decided to show him. Look, Izuku." She extended her hands, and bright, sparkling energy waves shimmered from her palms. They danced in the air, creating mesmerizing patterns and colors. Izuku watched in awe, holding his breath. "This is incredible!" he exclaimed. "How do you do that?" "I have a special quirk," Nijire replied proudly. "I can manipulate energy. I can create different waves and even use them in battle if I need to." "Wow, that's really cool," Izuku said, his eyes shining. "I wish I could do something like that." Nijire smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. She felt a real connection between them. "Maybe one day I can teach you," she said hopefully. "Though I'm not sure how it'll work without a quirk." "I believe anyone can become a hero, even without a quirk," Izuku said, repeating her earlier words. Her encouragement had strengthened his confidence. He now believed that there were many exciting moments ahead for them. At that moment, Inko approached, a bit concerned that her son had gotten so absorbed in the conversation. "Izuku, you haven't forgotten about your studies, have you?" she asked gently. "Mom, Izuku began, but Nijire jumped in. "Don't worry, Auntie. I was just showing Izuku my quirk. He's super impressed." Inko looked at Nijire and smiled warmly. "I'm glad to hear that, Nijire. But Izuku, remember your responsibilities." "Of course, Mom," he replied, though deep inside, he didn't want to leave. He had found something special with Nijire. Maybe we can meet later. Nijire asked hopefully. Yes, definitely. I really want to see you again, Izuku replied, blushing and smiling. Nijire nodded, eyes shining. Great. Let's meet in the park sometime. Yes, let's. Izuku agreed, certain that this was the start of something wonderful. When Nijire left with her father, Izuku sat down again, a smile still on his face. His heart was full of hope. New adventures and a new friendship lay ahead, perhaps one that would help him face whatever came next. A few days later, Izuku waited eagerly for their meeting. He thought about Nijire often and hoped their friendship would grow. When they finally met again in the park, he was filled with anticipation. Hi, Izuku. Nijire called cheerfully as she ran up. Hi, Nijire. He replied, heart racing. They walked through the park, discussing their dreams and future plans. Nijire talked about her training and her longing to become a hero like her idols. Izuku listened, admiring her passion. And you? What's your dream? Nijire asked, stopping to face him. I want to become a great hero, Izuku said with determination. I want to protect people and prove that you can be strong, even without a quirk. Nijire nodded, impressed. I believe in you, Izuku. You can do it. She encouraged. Her words filled him with strength. They continued walking and laughing. And in that moment, Izuku realized, this friendship gave him the strength he had been missing. Their story had just begun. Many challenges and adventures awaited. But now, Izuku felt ready to face them, with Nijire, his new best friend, by his side. To be continued. Chapter 10, The Pursuit of Care. Actually, there is a way to restore your former state, said Dr. Garaki, his voice uncertain. He wasn't entirely confident his MSTR could recover all of his abilities completely. And what's the hidden catch? Asked All for One, his curiosity piqued. The doctor was known for his unexpected revelations, and his ideas often exceeded even the boldest expectations. He rarely made claims unless he was absolutely sure. But this time felt different. He had a method, but even he doubted its success. Still, his words carried enough weight to earn Hisashi's attention. The problem lies in time itself, Garaki said, stroking his thick mustache and adjusting his robe. He rose, took a tablet, and slowly walked over to All for One. Meeting his eyes, he spoke words that, to put it mildly, did not bring Hisashi any comfort. Your restoration process will take 3 years and 7 months. He paused, studying his MSTR's face. Yet Hisashi showed little surprise, as if the timeframe didn't bother him. Your unique quirk demands specific conditions. And as always, power comes at a price. Each time you use various abilities, your body and quirk undergo minor mutations. If not for your extraordinary regeneration, recovery would take much longer, or in the worst case, it would lead to death, he explained, scrolling through the tablet to display medical analyses and current data on All for One's condition. Your DNA is constantly degrading, but your genetic memory quirk helps preserve it. Based on that, my research suggests we can not only reverse the decay but return you to the state you were in before your encounter with the Almighty. The mention of DNA made Hisashi uneasy. He realized that, because of his own unique biology, Izuku might be affected as well. The realization hit him like a shockwave. One question had been lingering ever since the word DNA was mentioned. If, hypothetically, I had a child, would my quirk be passed down to him? All for One. Hisashi asked quietly. The doctor frowned slightly, watching his MSTR glance at a Nomu suspended in stasis. Theoretically, no. If a child were conceived under such conditions, not only would your quirk not be inherited, but the mother's quirk likely wouldn't pass on either. Your DNA would interfere with the formation of the quirk factor, leaving the child quirkless, lacking even the extra joint in the toe. Biologically, he'd remain at the pre-quirk stage of human evolution, Garaki said without hesitation. All for One understood every word. He had unknowingly condemned Izuku to a quirkless life and an uncertain future, all because of his own nature. The mere thought stirred hatred within him. He would never allow himself to walk away from his son and Inko. Never. Hisashi had no memories of a loving family. His only brother had rejected his ideals. His mother. All he remembered was the food he had to devour like a starving animal. As for his father, he had never met him. From what he could tell, the man had abandoned them before he was even born. That was why Hisashi adopted the surname Shigaraki, until he later took Inko's name. She welcomed the change, seeing it as a sign of love and a promise that he would never leave her. Hisashi Midoriya became a symbol of a new life. And he had changed, at least until the shadows of his past began pulling him back. He and Yoichi had fought to survive as children. Then came the awakening of his quirk, and his rise as the Lord of Darkness and Fear. But now, for the first time, he had a real family. He had doubts after marrying Inko, but they disappeared when he saw the kindness and love she gave both to Izuku and to him. He became a father. And now he swore to give Izuku a life of freedom, one without burden or hunger, unlike the one he had lived. He would never abandon them. The only thing standing in the way was unfinished business that threatened to consume everything he'd built. Before he could return to them, it all had to end. His thoughts were interrupted as Garaki coughed into his fist and adjusted his glasses. All this is purely theoretical, sir. No one can predict how it might turn out. My theory may very well be wrong, I haven't tested it yet, he said, putting the tablet aside and rummaging through stacks of papers on his desk. Understood, Hisashi replied calmly. Even if the theory held, and Izuku remained quirkless, he would inherit more than just a quirk. He would carry the legacy of All for One. Someday, Inko and Izuku would need to know the truth. But that day hadn't come. Not yet. Izuku was only 2. He still had time, 2 years before his quirk might awaken. That would be enough for a child to enjoy a meal without fear. Over those 2 years, Hisashi had been gathering villains, preparing his army of Nomus, readying one final blow against the hero society. Now, Izuku was 4, and Hisashi found himself wondering who the boy resembled more, himself or Inko. The thought warmed him. Izuku was growing, no longer the toddler who hid under tables. Even at 4, he was already trying to act grown-up. Hisashi wondered what dreams his son was chasing. Children had wild imaginations, and as his father, he would support those dreams, no matter how strange or dangerous they seemed. He thought about the doctor's plan and decided it would remain a last resort. 3 years was a long time. And the biggest downside, he would be in suspended animation, unable to think or command his subordinates. To be continued. Chapter 11, The Choice Between Two Personalities. Hisashi, more commonly known as All for One, found himself in deep contemplation about whether Inko would reach out to him with a call. The late hour, 22:37 across all of Japan, was weighing heavily on his mind, especially with the knowledge that the next day marked the beginning of another workweek, when everyone would inevitably retire for the night. Seated in the dimly lit confines of his office, he picked up his personal phone, which had been carefully encrypted. Only Inko had the privilege to contact him through that specific number. After selecting the sole contact stored in his device, he began waiting, hoping for someone to answer. The phone emitted a steady ringing sound, but no one picked up. After a lengthy wait of 38 seconds, he speculated that she might have already fallen asleep. With a gentle press of his index finger, he contemplated ending the call when, at last, he heard Inko's voice. Hisashi's face lit up with surprise as he raised the phone to his ear. "Hello, my beloved Inko," he greeted her, his voice calm and indifferent, yet tinged with warmth. "Hello, dear. How are you doing, and how is your health?" At that moment, Izuku was peacefully asleep, and Inko spoke softly, careful not to disturb her son. She yearned to share everything that had transpired over the past week, especially the realization that their son, lacking a quirk, would likely never fulfill his dream of becoming a hero. Earlier that evening, he had been sitting in his room, shrouded in darkness, captivated by the screen where All Might was heroically saving lives, radiating his signature smile. Inko felt the urge to turn on the lights but hesitated, as Izuku seemed to sense her presence. With tears glistening in his eyes, he turned towards her. His expression conveyed a profound understanding of the harsh reality: when individuals feel they cannot achieve their dreams, even if they exert every effort, it can be devastating. He had told both Nijire and his mother that he would become a hero despite being quirkless, but deep within, he harbored doubts about those words, realizing that an ordinary person often struggles to embody the ideal of a hero. As he surveyed his surroundings, Izuku recognized that society, along with its professions and attire, was primarily designed for those who possessed quirks. Although everyone around insisted that no divisions existed based on quirks and that all individuals were equal, the reality was far more complex. People with quirks consistently enjoyed advantages over their quirkless counterparts. Despite the latter's resilience and efforts to prove their worth, statistics often told a different story. Attributes like strength, endurance, and agility were consistently associated with those who had powerful quirks, particularly among those with mutation or heteromorphic abilities. Consequently, quirkless individuals found themselves marginalized, even when they achieved remarkable success in education and science. Society largely turned its back on them, despite their potential to learn alongside others. The prevailing social climate was one of division. The primitive mindset of us versus them fostered an environment where quirkless individuals were ostracized, labeled as unfit or disabled. The suicide rates among the youth without quirks were alarmingly high, although statistical reports documented the number of quirkless individuals who had succumbed to such despair. They were often ignored, much like the elderly who had endured to this point. Due to health issues and age, these individuals could no longer contribute to society, rendering them useless even to their own government, resulting in solitary deaths, often sustained by begging from those more fortunate. These dreadful thoughts about Izuku potentially becoming one of those lost souls without a promising future, forever dependent on his parents, deeply saddened Inko, leading her to quiet sobs. All for one, who was attuned to her emotional state, listened in silence, his heart heavy. He turned off his microphone, stood up in a fit of rage, and angrily pushed his chair aside, furious that someone had dared to make his precious jewel cry. Overcome with anger, he lost control over his quirks, unleashing chaos throughout his meticulously organized office. The activation of an overwhelming number of quirks caused him to cough uncontrollably. Desperate to stifle the sound, he covered his mouth with his hand, but from the phone came Inko's fractured and trembling voice calling out for Hisashi. "Hisashi, hello. Please answer, I beg of you, don't leave me alone." Dismissing his coughing fit, he finally responded to the call, still struggling to breathe as remnants of his previous ordeal lingered. "I'm here cough, Inko." The sound of her coughing husband startled her, but Hisashi quickly moved to reassure her. "I'm fine, don't worry about the cough. I sat under the air conditioner for too long yesterday and caught a cold, but I saw the doctor today, and he assured me that I should be back to normal in 2 days." Attempting to lighten the mood with humor regarding his cough, Hisashi swiftly eased her concerns. He decided to inquire about her emotional state, for after 2 years away, he was out of touch with the dynamics within their home. He was hesitant to send spies, as he lacked confidence in even the most devoted ones. Even if he could manipulate them to his will, the stakes were simply too high. Despite his physical absence, he had compensated as a father and husband by sending generous amounts of money each week for their expenses, allowing Izuku to indulge in whatever he desired. "Now, tell me, Inko, what has made you so sad? I truly do not want to hear or think about you feeling unhappy," All for One inquired, his tone commanding, yet filled with concern, as he recognized her importance as the first person in his life who saw beyond mere quirks. Although he had previously showcased his fire breath to her, she refrained from probing further about his quirk, which was quite remarkable in a society where quirks held such pivotal significance. A person like Inko was a rare gem, one in a million, perhaps even a billion, and witnessing her in tears was unacceptable to anyone who dared to utter a negative word about her. Simultaneously with his words, Inko felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over her, the weight of her role as a wife and mother, combined with an overwhelming sense of helplessness and despair. She grappled with the reality that she could not support her son in his most vulnerable moment when he was crying uncontrollably in front of the doctor and her. Children are inherently pure beings, and a single misguided word or action could leave an indelible mark on their memories, haunting them throughout their lives. Thus, the adage, "adults are just big children," rings true. "Well, or rather, Izuku and I went to the doctor to check for quirks," she began, trailing off at the last word, hinting at the gravity of the situation. However, All for One was so engrossed in the issue at hand that he overlooked the dramatic pause. "Please, continue, I'm listening." Prior to that day, we had been playing together in the evening, excitedly discussing his dream of becoming a hero, wanting to emulate All Might, and even aspire to surpass him, a hero who battles not just villains, but also the problems faced by people. The mere mention of All Might ignited a flicker of anger within All for One, yet he resolved that since Izuku's dream was to become a hero who aids others, he would assist him, albeit in his own unique manner. He played with such bravery, recounting his imagined adventures as a hero. Can you believe it? He, like you, dramatically crafted a motto for his heroic identity. He mirrors you so closely, even adopting your mannerisms. Inko chuckled at this charming moment, eliciting a satisfied smile from AFO at the sound of her joyful laughter and at Izuku's adorable antics. Clearly intrigued, All for One pressed Inko for more information about her son, causing her to exhale nervously. "I asked him questions about you, but he avoided them at all costs. Although he was reluctant to discuss you, he kept mimicking your mannerisms, how you walk and even how you eat. Isn't that sweet, Hisashi? His behavior clearly expresses how much he misses you." Inko remarked, her smile reflecting the joy of seeing her son emulate his father, a testament to his enduring love for Hisashi, who had been absent for quite some time. He felt a surge of warmth at the realization that Izuku was imitating his poetic expressions, melting the ice that had encased All for One's heart, filling him with warmth. For a fleeting moment, he almost forgot about his cough until she reminded him of it. "Please, continue, Inko, I am genuinely interested." With these words, Inko's mood shifted from positivity to neutrality. "Let's return to the moment we spent in the hospital. I took him there, and we sat together." Izuku was positively glowing with happiness that day, a day he had eagerly anticipated. The doctor conducted all the necessary tests, but his demeanor shifted dramatically. He greeted us with enthusiasm, yet as soon as he concluded the tests, his mood plummeted. He hesitated to share his findings, but, All for One felt a wave of anxiety wash over him at the prospect of what Inko might reveal next, already suspecting the nature of the news. Just as he was about to disclose the diagnosis, a 4-year-old girl burst into the room, mirroring Izuku in cuteness. Together, they formed an adorable duo. My boy already has a girlfriend, I'm delighted for my little one." The doctor informed us that he was quirkless, but that's not all. He had never encountered such a situation, his quirkless son had somehow become extraordinary in his eyes. All for One realized that if he did not take control of this situation, the tragedies reported in the news, particularly the suicides of quirkless individuals, a phenomenon society dismissively termed the end of nothing, could very well repeat with his only heir. In an effort to comfort Inko, he spoke soothingly, delivering the words she had been longing to hear. "Do not worry, my dear wife, I will return home in 2 days, and I will do everything possible to ensure Izuku's happiness. Just allow me to finalize my affairs, and then we will embark on a well-deserved vacation to Kagoshima Prefecture. Before I hear your answer, may I ask for the name of the girl who met Izuku?" Enthusiastically proposing this, All for One ignited a spark of joy in Inko at the news that her husband would soon return from his business trip, with the vacation being an unexpected bonus. She was elated at the thought that he displayed genuine interest in Izuku's personal life. Without hesitation, she revealed the name of the girl who would play a significant role in Izuku's future. Mijire Hado. She's a lovely little girl with blue eyes and blue hair. Personality-wise, she is quite similar to Izuku, although she can be a bit arrogant and incredibly curious. His description of the girl thrilled him, and he became eager to learn more about her parents. But there's more. When they told Izuku he was quirkless, she, upon hearing his cries, rushed and immediately opened the door and embraced him. I couldn't even comprehend what transpired. I tried to comfort the sobbing Izuku but failed. Yet she, through her hugs or perhaps some magical influence, managed to reassure him, and after just 5 minutes of conversation, he seemed to feel better. I believe that after I return home, I will meet Nijire's parents. Finding someone who looks at a quirkless individual with genuine care and concern is practically a rarity. Support their relationship, Inko, and do not allow them to quarrel. Inko chuckled at her husband's remarks, realizing that her romantic and caring husband had already facilitated their connection well before their official wedding at just 4 years old. I never expected you to be so invested in their relationship. Proudly puffing out his chest, All for One allowed his emotions to flow freely, spinning in his chair, smiling, and gazing at the ceiling. This is my son, and I will do everything in my power to ensure he feels good about himself. Aha, he rushed home after school today, insisting that we hurry so we could finally return home. According to him, Nijire was waiting for him in their secret base that no one should know about. Ah, how quickly children grow up. After making this remark, Inko chose to remain silent about the earlier incident involving the crying Izuku, who looked at her with a hopeful expression. Can I be a hero like you, Mom? Inko dashed to him, accidentally dropping the plate of dango she had brought for Izuku after their visit to the doctor. With tears streaming down her face, she enveloped her son in a tight embrace, while he grasped her hand, wiping away the fresh tears that had formed, and began to cry even harder, rubbing his eyes against his mother's shirt. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I truly am sorry. Izuku did not anticipate such a response from his mother and resigned himself to the painful truth that she would not be able to provide him with the moral support he needed to become a hero. As they continued to converse for over an hour about various topics, they might have continued even longer if Inko had not pointed out the time that had slipped away like a comet during their heartfelt exchange. Good night, my dear. I love you. And I love you too, dear. Don't worry, Izuku, I will be home soon, and you will never have to worry about being quirkless. While he was lost in thought, someone knocked on the door, and in a cold tone, he said, Come in. The door opened to reveal Dr. Garaki, who entered confidently, removing his white coat and placing it into the pocket of his lab coat. Sir, your plan is nearing completion, and you need to finalize the last details to bring it to fruition. AFO felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him, pleased that such a grand scheme was being executed with remarkable efficiency. Tomorrow would mark a significant triumph for him in front of the people of Japan, as the very pillar of peace and justice would fall before their eyes, alongside the other pro-heroes of Japan. Excellent, my old friend, I take great pride in having such a capable scientist by my side. Pride radiated from every aspect of Dr. Garaki as he puffed out his chest while AFO stood up from his chair and approached him. Let's go, show me everything you have prepared for the heroes. To be continued. Chapter 12, Battle of Strongest Part 1. As I strolled past the laboratory known as All for One, I found myself confronted by an astonishing sight, hundreds, if not thousands, of Nomu, each varying in shape and size. These extraordinary beings possessed a range of quirks and physical might that could rival even the most powerful of quirk holders. In total, there were 1,250 units, all eagerly awaiting the command of their MSTR. All for One was profoundly impressed by the impressive work of his subordinate, who, brimming with pride, detailed the specific purpose of each Nomu. You now have access to a staggering 1,250 Nomu units, meticulously divided into 5 distinct brigades, each assigned its own unique mission, the doctor declared, his tone filled with pride, fully aware that this project had become his crowning achievement. He had been granted the remarkable opportunity to create living weapons from the corpses of deceased individuals, weapons that would serve his ambitious fantasies. There was no place for morality, humanitarianism, or rules, only cold, calculated reasoning and sharp intellect. I am genuinely taken aback by your remarkable creations, but could you shed some light on how this formidable army will fight alongside me? Moreover, should I be concerned about any potential malfunctions in their operation? All for one would not be his true self if he did not meticulously consider every possible outcome of events where things could deviate from the intended plan. There will be no malfunctions, the doctor replied with unwavering confidence. The likelihood of the management of these Nomu falling into enemy hands is effectively zero. They are incapable of resisting your will. Allow me to elaborate on which brigade is tasked with containing the heroes. The doctor produced a tablet, revealing a detailed display of the Nomu's numbering and their ranks relative to the top 100 heroes of Japan. D rank comprises 375 units, each standing at a height of 140 centimeters and weighing 50 kilograms, characterized by a black exterior and striking yellow eyes. Additionally, there are 375 flying units with identical specifications but adorned in a dark blue color. Alone, they possess relatively weak firepower, but their sheer numbers compensate for this deficiency. 100 of these Nomu are strategically designated to wear down and contain heroes ranked C and B. However, a hero from the top 20 can effortlessly wipe out such low-ranked Nomu in droves. For those who manage to advance through them with ease, other types of Nomu await. C rank consists of 300 units, each 167 centimeters tall and weighing 79 kilograms, featuring a gray coloration, human-like eyes, and razor-sharp teeth capable of severing a human head with ease. Heroes of C rank must exert themselves to the fullest to defeat such Nomu, but their numbers are not as overwhelming as those of D rank. Nonetheless, they possess a unique ability to explode, disorienting the hero with bursts of weak acid that can inflict damage upon their skin. B rank includes 150 Nomu, each standing at 160 centimeters tall and weighing 106 kilograms, exhibiting muscular physiques and a green hue. They possess commendable agility, speed, and endurance. These beings are designed for heroes in the top 10, who possess impressive levels of strength, speed, and experience to avoid a disastrous defeat. They have been implanted with a weak regenerative capability to ensure that the hero cannot reach the brain located at the top. A rank comprises 50 Nomu intended for the top 3 heroes. They will be in close proximity to you, and all the previous shortcomings of earlier Nomu have been comprehensively addressed. These beings boast physical strength on par with the most formidable power heroes and possess regenerative abilities that can restore any limb, except for the head. Although they are slow, their power compensates for their lack of speed, with each Nomu capable of effortlessly lifting a truck weighing 20 tons. Impressed by all the advancements in genetic engineering, All for One began to ponder the whereabouts of the missing 50 Nomu required for the impending battle. Garaki, where have you placed the additional 50 Nomu? Garaki sighed heavily, feeling a pang of anxiety in his heart, and looked into the unwavering eyes of his MSTR. MSTR, those 50 A-rank Nomu were designated for the protection of the laboratory, should the heroes employ reserve forces to locate it, he explained. Smiling, All for One patted Dr. Garaki on the shoulder. The absence of 50 units from the army did not frustrate him. On the contrary, it filled him with satisfaction, as it was one of the critical elements within the possession of the Lord of Darkness. Do not worry, my friend, this is merely a small detail. Even without these 50 Nomu, the heroes will find it exceedingly difficult to approach me. With a contented chuckle, the doctor handed him the tablet displaying the characteristics and images of the Nomu. D rank, 375 ground units and 375 flying Nomu, C rank, 300 units, B rank, 150 units, A rank, 50 units and 50 for laboratory security. And how do I control them? This question had been anticipated by Garaki from the very beginning, and with a smile, he dramatically stroked his mustache. You need only a single word, MSTR. With a wide grin, All for One surveyed the array of Nomu standing motionless before him. One word was sufficient for all of them to obey his command without exception. Kneel. The Nomu dropped to one knee, supporting their weight with their right hand, lowering their heads as they gazed at the floor. Even the A-rank Nomu bent the knee before their MSTR, despite their imposing size. Excellent, ahahaha. Roaring with laughter at the scene, he left the scientist standing next to him in a state of shock, as he felt the powerful aura emanating from his MSTR. Stepping back several paces, he approached the table where his latest invention for this battle awaited. MSTR, allow me to present my latest invention designed specifically for your battle. Demonstrating his enthusiasm for the scientist's creations, All for One focused on a small device in the doctor's hand that resembled a control panel, and his gaze fell upon a sinister mask for the face lying on the table. Its color was as dark as tar, concealing any features, and it was connected to various tubes. Sir, this is a teleportation device, and it is linked to you. Should your pulse drop below 70, it will immediately teleport you to this laboratory, indicating a dire need for medical assistance. All for One's confidence surged, now exceeding 100%. Taking the teleporter in hand, he placed it into his new black English suit, complete with a coat that could withstand all his quirks without tearing like ordinary fabric. Curiosity piqued regarding the mask's potential. This mask, I believe, demands my attention. As he approached the table, he caught sight of his reflection in the visor of the mask. White hair and white eyes radiated confidence. Sir, this is not yet the final version of your helmet. This is merely a prototype, but it is functional. It can filter out poisonous gases and convert them into pure oxygen. Even if those with gas-related quirks attempt to use gas against you, they will find themselves unable to harm you. He donned the ominous mask, combining it seamlessly with his suit. Synchronizing with the mask, it began to glow in vibrant neon purple hues. Why so many? It seems perfect for the upcoming battle. The doctor attempted to dissuade him from this course, but All for One swiftly quelled his concerns with his response, causing the doctor to shiver. Enough. You have already excelled in your efforts, and I will not delay this plan any longer. All for One declared, clenching his fists. He had invested considerable time into this plan, and now he had no choice but to act swiftly. Inko and Izuku were waiting for him, missing him since his departure. He yearned to once again touch the appealing face of his beloved and embrace Izuku, who had matured since he left. The mere thought of them fueled his motivation to incinerate all his enemies in hellfire. The doctor opted not to say anything further to his MSTR and simply nodded in agreement. Observing the proud figure of his MSTR and his army, he offered a faint smile before turning away, heading toward the nearest monitors. Kuragiri, prepare a portal for me in the forest near Mount Fuji. Before him, a purplish mist opened up, fulfilling the MSTR's command and sending him into the woods. As soon as All for One departed, Dr. Garaki sent a specially prepared video recording to the government and the hero community as a whole, intentionally avoiding the mass media and ordinary citizens. This video was addressed specifically to All Might. All Might, if you see this recording, know that I am fully aware of your fury regarding your teacher. If you seek revenge, I invite you to Mount Fuji. Here, one of us must rise, and the other must fall. Making a dramatic pause, he directed his gaze toward Mount Fuji, which was obscured by clouds. And Gran Torino, I know you have also been searching for me all these years. If you wish to take revenge for your partner, you have my invitation. All Might and Gran Torino, who had been relentlessly searching for All for One throughout the years, were engulfed in a wave of rage upon witnessing his face in its entirety. Not only did he exhibit no fear, but he openly mocked them, smirking at every opportunity. Watching the recording, All Might donned his hero costume and assumed his peak form. He had grown stronger since their first encounter. He had searched exhaustively for any traces of All for One, but found nothing, as he had systematically eradicated all information regarding himself. Gran Torino was equally consumed by anger. Night I am en route to Mount Fuji. The day I faced my most formidable enemy is repeating itself. I cannot be certain I will return alive, but one thing I am absolutely sure of, I will stop All for One at the cost of my own life. Mirai was taken aback by this revelation. He utilized his quirk of foresight and witnessed a scene that left him in utter shock. All Might lay on the ground in a tattered costume. Nearby, Gran Torino was sprawled, his limbs broken and useless. That moment was enough to send chills down his spine and instill a cold sweat across his brow. All Might remained on the line, and after his words hung in the air, he waited in silence for a response from Night Eye. Unable to withstand the thought of his idol perishing, Mirai began to scream at All Might, who had anticipated such a reaction from his old friend. Idiot! Don't go there. You're walking into sure death, not just for yourself, but for Gran Torino. He unleashed his feelings without restraint, forgetting all formalities. But All Might, as always, stood his ground, refusing to make any concessions or compromises. Mirai had hoped that he might listen to him this time, but he was sorely mistaken. No, Mirai, I won't allow him to slip through my grasp again. Our battle will conclude today. It is my duty as the symbol of peace, and I cannot truly be All Might if I fail to fulfill my responsibility. If this is our last conversation, know that it has been an honor to work alongside you, my old friend. Upon hearing these words, Mirai began to shout and weep, pleading for him not to go there alone. He wished to participate in this battle as well, fighting side by side with his idol, but All Might refused him, asserting that this was his personal quest for vengeance. All Might, I have seen your future, and in it, you die the most horrific death imaginable, and One for All will fall into the hands of All for One. I implore you, do not do this. All Might was undeterred by this response. With a resolute smile, he spoke to Night Eye, conveying what he had long wished to express. The future can be altered. Even the most precise computer in existence can make errors, and so can you. No one is destined to see the future, only God knows it. Dissatisfied with his answer, Night Eye rose from his chair. He intended to counter his statement, but All Might cut off the connection, delivering just 3 words. Farewell, my friend. With that, he hung up and, with a surge of immense force, shattered the phone he had been holding. All Might. He barely had time to utter the name when the connection was severed, leaving Night Eye in a state of complete silence. With shocked eyes, he stared at the door of his office. No. 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 No, he shouted at the top of his lungs, tossing his glasses aside and grabbing his long fingers into his meticulously groomed green hair, ruffling it in distress. All Might was the first person to believe in him and give him hope for a future where he could become a hero despite his quirk. He would never forget that day. His contribution to the development of Hero Society was so profound and invaluable that he bought every kind of merchandise featuring All Might, from toys to clothing, even if they were absurdly expensive. Banging his head against the table, for the first time in his life, he felt utterly lost about what to do. With his foresight, he had always had a plan for every situation, but this time he was left with nothing but despair. Gathering his thoughts, he glanced at the phone that contained a contact for emergencies regarding All Might's reckless tendencies. All for One, standing in a secluded clearing, awaited his adversary alone, keeping his cards close to his chest. He gazed at the majestic Mount Fuji, a mountain steeped in legends and myths. He planned to celebrate his victory by throwing All Might's body from its heights, marking his triumph over the symbol of peace. For according to his own words, one must rise, and the other must fall. While AFO surveyed the mountain, he was confident that All Might would arrive very soon, fully aware of his speed. He had grown significantly stronger since their first encounter and was now at the pinnacle of his powers, ready to arrive within minutes. Lost in thought about what Izuku might be doing, he noticed 2 figures rapidly approaching in the sky. They could not catch him off guard, as he possessed reflexes that surpassed the sound barrier for beings like them. He chose not to dodge, instead opting to absorb their strikes with his shield, which, despite cracking, managed to withstand their assault. As the shield shattered, he sent both of them flying to the side, keenly observing their reactions. The first, whose ever-present smile had vanished, now wore a quiet rage and a sinister grin. The second, whose focus was his trademark, now exhibited a furrowed brow and streaks of gray in his hair. Finally, you have arrived. To be continued. Chapter 13, Battle of Strongest Part 2. In a spacious clearing, Gran Torino and All Might stood resolute, their eyes fixed on the formidable figure of All for One. With an air of confidence, All for One flashed a sly smile as he deftly shook the dust from his attire, casting a sidelong glance at the two heroes, who appeared visibly tense and on edge. "Why such serious expressions, gentlemen? Perhaps I can assist you in cooling down a bit." He swiftly lifted his right hand, pointing it directly at them. The heroes braced themselves for an impending attack, prepared to counter any threat that might emerge. However, to their astonishment, nothing occurred. This unexpected lull left All Might perplexed as he turned to regard All for One, who remained unmoving and poised. The scene was almost comical. All for One stood dramatically with an outstretched hand while the two heroes were frozen in place, exchanging bewildered glances at the absurdity of the situation. Gran Torino, unable to suppress his amusement, let out a smirk. In a flash, he activated his maximum speed and soared toward All for One, his foot hovering perilously close to the villain's face when All for One unexpectedly seized his leg with an astral grip. Gran Torino, stunned by such a remarkable ability, attempted to retract his leg. Meanwhile, All Might, unwilling to witness what might transpire with his mentor, dashed forward at full speed, extending his right hand to deliver a powerful blow. Detroit Smash. The impact unleashed a massive cloud of dust that enveloped the entire area. As the dust settled, the striking image revealed itself. All for One stood defiantly, completely unmoved, effortlessly holding back the formidable attacks from the two strongest heroes with his powerful force shields. What a pity it is that nothing ever changes, wouldn't you agree, Toshinori? With a flourish, All for One activated a myriad of quirks, causing his hand to undergo a startling transformation into an astonishingly large structure that resembled a cannon, charging with energy as the mutations progressed. In a desperate bid to save his mentor, All Might grasped Gran Torino's arm, pulling him away from the clutches of the astral hand. However, at a significant cost, Toshinori absorbed the brunt of the blow, shielding his teacher with his own body. A deafening sound erupted from the discharge, resulting in a tremor that shook the ground beneath them. A beam of violet light struck All Might, devastating the right side of his costume, which now appeared as little more than tattered threads from a shredded garment. Witnessing All Might's resilience against such a formidable assault, All for One felt a surge of admiration for his strength. No longer needing to hold back, he resolved to eliminate All for One, determined to bring down the villain from the lifeless body of All Might. As he restored his hand to its normal state, he surveyed Gran Torino, who was skillfully attempting to confuse All for One with his swift and agile movements, deftly leaping from tree to tree. What an insufferable flea, much like Nimbus. With a smirk at the resemblance between the two, he felt compelled to act decisively. Activating an explosion quirk that emanated outward in a 15-meter radius, he unleashed a powerful explosion. The hero's hand came perilously close to striking All for One in the eye. Gran Torino was sent hurtling back, but All Might quickly took his place to counter the threat. He managed to land a blow against All for One's torso. However, it felt akin to a mere pebble striking an elephant, as he had already activated his formidable defensive quirks, Diamond Skin, Hardening, Steel Skin, Spiked Armor. All Might experienced the sensation of striking against an impenetrable barrier, but within moments, his hand began to bleed from the sharp spikes of the armor. All for One, intent on maintaining distance, repelled All Might with a powerful gust of wind. Thrown back, All Might collected branches and debris with his body, gathering dirt and grime upon himself. Coming to a halt, he quickly regained his footing, searching for his mentor, who was nowhere to be seen amidst the dense foliage of the forest. Yet, Gran Torino arrived as swiftly as he could, standing beside him. Noticing his student smeared with soot and dirt, Gran Torino inquired about his condition. "So, Toshi, can you still fight?" Looking at his mentor with a puzzled expression, he silently questioned, "Is he serious?" It was the only explanation for All Might's bewildered demeanor in that moment. "Are you really asking that?" Quickly rising from the ground, he observed the path he had carved through the forest, focusing on the distant dark figure of All for One. Gran Torino interrupted his thoughts. "Focus. He doesn't let us get close. If he does, he activates a force field or a defensive quirk. The strategy is sound, as All for One often relies on long-range attack quirks. However, All Might added that he cannot activate both a defensive quirk and an attacking quirk simultaneously. As he ages, he becomes weaker, yet he remains a formidable opponent. If you can distract him, I can deliver a strong blow to make him lose concentration over his quirks." Hearing the logical reasoning of his student, Gran Torino smirked at such a bold assertion. "Easier said than done. And don't allow him to raise his hand." Gran Torino felt pain in his arm from the powerful explosion, while All Might's back ached from the hard ground. He tensed his legs, preparing to leap toward All for One and deliver a swift strike. Just as he began to run, on the forest floor, All Might was fending off D-rank Nomu, which posed little difficulty individually, but their sheer numbers made it challenging to utilize his strength without risking injury to himself. With a single Detroit smash, he obliterated over 50 D-rank Nomu that had surrounded him. When he spotted his approaching teacher, he contemplated whether Gran Torino could assist him, but instead, the older hero grabbed him by the shoulders, dragging him deeper into the forest. "Teacher, why did you do that? I could have handled them easily." All Might reconsidered his words upon witnessing the flying Nomu pursuing them, and turned his gaze downward, where not merely dozens but hundreds of Nomu of various colors and forms awaited. Awkwardly swallowing the lump that had lodged in his throat, he directed his gaze to the right, spotting All for One with outstretched arms, who seemed to be deliberately biding his time for such an opportunity. "Teacher, to the right!" All Might shouted in warning. Unfortunately, Gran Torino failed to evade the impending danger, and both heroes were struck by a powerful long-range attack. Released from All for One's grasp, they crashed to the ground with a loud crack, shattering the branches of the tree beneath them. Gradually regaining his senses, Gran Torino heard rapid footsteps approaching. Suddenly, he felt a strong grip from All Might, who was dragging his unconscious mentor toward an open clearing, bringing them to a halt at its center. In the air, Nomu soared, observing them as if they were prey, while from the bushes and tree branches emerged Nomu with grotesque teeth and disfigured bodies, resembling no human form. And as a chilling finale, All for One hovered in the air with outstretched arms, signaling a gesture of peace. Lowering himself to the ground, he extended his hand toward them, proposing a deal, hoping they would reconsider and surrender voluntarily. "I offer you a deal." A dramatic pause hung in the air, creating palpable tension among the heroes, who surveyed their surroundings, now encircled by Nomu that would require only a single command to devour them to their last bone. "You will voluntarily hand over All for One to me, and in return, I will spare you and allow you to leave, so be it." All Might's anger flared at his words, for the voluntary surrender of a quirk in exchange for their lives signified the death of millions who would perish at his hands, rendering Nana Shimura's sacrifice a futile loss. Clenching his jaw, he glared at the glassy eyes of his enemy, who was openly mocking their predicament. "You not only failed to pass this quirk to your successor, but you also presented him to me on a silver platter. You remain a reckless All Might." He was interrupted by a swift strike from All Might, who moved at the speed of sound. Had he hesitated for even a millisecond, All for One would have lost his head. The Nomu instinctively prepared to spring into action, but their MSTR's mental, "Shut up." All Might roared, his strikes infused with a fierce anger that amplified his impact, yet All for One easily parried the blows, gradually counterattacking. Seizing an opportunity, he propelled All for One back with an air cannon, sending him crashing towards Gran Torino, who was observing the unfolding chaos, unable to intervene due to the shockwave generated by their fierce exchanges. Well. I thought you wanted to stop me, not kill me. All Might, you remind me of All for One and her predecessor, as you immediately fell into primal rage. His taunt struck deep, acting like salt on an open wound, and All Might's fury boiled over, escalating as he struggled to maintain control. All for One, with a calm demeanor, absorbed All Might's predictable attacks, eliciting a faint smirk on his lips. Pushing him back once more, All for One sought to exploit the emotional turmoil brewing within All Might, who was already on the brink of losing his composure. Rage is like straw, All Might, it burns out quickly. Snorting dismissively at his words, All Might tightened his grip, determination etched across his features. Don't lecture me about the wisdom of life, All for One. Where is Nana Shimura's body? All Might retorted, not bothering to conceal his growing disgust towards his adversary, which intensified with every passing moment of the battle. How audacious of you to mention Nana Shimura. You immediately descended into your tirade. How regrettable, All Might. I expected so much more from you. And as for Nana Shimura, how delightful it was to witness and hear the sounds of her flesh being torn apart by the Nomu, devouring every last bone in her body. At such grisly details, shock washed over Gran Torino's face, quickly morphing into fear. They had believed All for One to have captured her and still held her in some laboratory. Now, he appeared to be an immoral monster, entirely indifferent to human life, pure evil that needed to be eradicated at all costs. Meanwhile, All Might stood in disbelief, cold sweat trickling down his brow as he opened his mouth, unable to find words, and finally screamed, striking the ground with his fist. Aya, you monster! All Might's voice was transformed, no longer resembling his usual tone, it was now cold and filled with fury, his eyes narrowing into the most serious expression he had ever worn. This is just the beginning, All Might. You see, due to the heroic deeds of your teacher, I decided to prepare a special gift for her. Gran Torino comprehended what he meant, and a sense of dread filled him, hoping his thoughts were misguided, but All for One's tone suggested otherwise. The Shimura family, thanks to Nana, is dead at my hands. Did you think you could conceal this from me? How unfortunate, she would never have hidden the existence of her family from me. All Might's knees trembled at this harrowing truth. He understood that no matter how All for One presented himself, he never lied, even when facing death. As he turned to face the portal opening behind him, All Might scowled, realizing he would have to save hostages as well. You liar! You would never do such a thing. All Might's accusations only served to amuse All for One, who grinned widely, revealing all his teeth. Oh, I would never lie, even in the face of my greatest enemy, would I, Mikan? This name struck a chord with All Might and Gran Torino, as it referred to Nana Shimura's first granddaughter, whom she had spoken of with pride, believing she would become the true heir of the Shimura legacy and her levitation quirk. The two heroes swallowed hard as a grotesque, disfigured mass resembling a 9-year-old girl emerged, her skin a sickly violet. The horrifying reality was compounded by the fact that she wore a child's dress and had black hair identical to that of her predecessor, One for All. Gran Torino, witnessing this abominable scene, felt his stomach churn, nearly retching at the revolting sight. The most sinister aspect was that around her neck hung a pendant that Gran Torino had gifted her on her 4th birthday. No. Chapter 14, Battle of Strongest Part 3. The All Might unleashed a furious scream, overwhelmed by such brutality, and, propelling himself with every ounce of strength he could muster, charged forward with the intent to deliver a devastating blow to All for One. Although he managed to react in time, activating his shield, it was futile, as he was unable to deploy it before the Almighty's strike landed squarely on his most vulnerable point, his chest, where a significant scar from their previous encounter still lingered. The impact of the blow was so immense that it sent All for One reeling, scattering Nomu of all ranks, from the smallest to the largest, away from the sheer destructive force of the Almighty, who was engulfed in a state of frenzied rage. Before All for One could even begin to recover from the onslaught, the Almighty relentlessly continued his assault, not granting him a moment to collect himself or raise his hands to activate any counterattacks. Despite this, All for One still held on to the chance to utilize his defensive quirks, and he seized this opportunity with urgency to mitigate the impending damage. With determination, he activated the necessary abilities just in time to shield himself from a torrential downpour of strikes from the enraged Almighty, each blow driving him deeper into the ground. Pain washed over him like a tidal wave. His defensive quirks proved insufficient, unable to fully absorb the catastrophic damage inflicted by the Almighty's relentless assault. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he experienced genuine physical agony that resonated through every fiber of his being. Gran Torino, witnessing the battle unfold, observed as his pupil pushed himself beyond his limits, causing catastrophic destruction with each powerful shockwave that emanated from their clash. To shield his own eyes from the flying debris, he was forced to cover his face with his hand. Meanwhile, the Namu, eager to assist the Almighty, found their efforts thwarted. Even the A-rank Nomu struggled to approach and provide aid to their MSTR. "You monster!" roared the Almighty, his hands trembling under the weight of the overwhelming power he wielded, and his knees shook as he fought to maintain his balance. The relentless barrage of blows continued to rain down upon All for One. As he absorbed the strikes, the symbol of evil attempted to formulate a counter-strategy, but all his efforts were in vain. Every attempt was interrupted by the Almighty, who showed no mercy, delivering even more punishing blows. Although the strikes did not cease entirely, they began to lose some of their momentum, and subsequent attacks targeted his chest and head. The protective mask he wore began to fracture, revealing his white pupil beneath. The suit, designed for his protection, was shredded under the relentless attacks of the Almighty. An A-rank Nomu, horrified by the unfolding chaos, charged at the Almighty, who was now striking him with less force, presumably to catch his breath. The Namu managed to push the Almighty away from All for One, engaging him in an unbalanced confrontation. Though he successfully fended off numerous attackers, his face betrayed the fact that, if the battle continued for just 5 more minutes, he would be completely out of breath, as the constant utilization of One for All was depleting the oxygen in his lungs, making each breath increasingly laborious. Namu emerged from every conceivable crevice, determined not to yield, disregarding their pain. Their singular focus was the demise of the Almighty and his partner, who was desperately fending off the airborne Namu pursuing him through the skies, clutching his chest tightly. His body throbbed with excruciating pain, but he paid it no heed, knowing that countless hours of effort and time had been invested in this battle, and those could never be reclaimed. His enemies were preoccupied with their own creations, and he continued to watch the unfolding events until a sense of urgency surged within him, which ultimately became the catalyst for his downfall. Soaring high into the sky, he attempted to ensnare Gran Torino with one of his many writhing tentacles, which were skillfully dodging attacks from the Namu and All for One's own appendages. The symbol of evil, fully aware of his opponent's tactics, led his adversary into confusion, slowly attacking with his tentacles until Gran Torino determined that this was the perfect moment for a counterattack. Approaching All for One with precision, he intended to deliver his most powerful blow, but something unexpectedly pierced through his leg. "What did you do to Nana's family?" All for One, tightening his grip around Gran Torino's throat, decided to taunt him, gazing at one of his most reviled enemies with a mocking grin. "No one has seen them since. I personally eliminated every single member of her family with my own hands, sparing no one, from the youngest child to the oldest adult," All for One declared with a particular SDSM, his eyes glinting with malice as he gazed at Torino, who was in shock, having lost all hope that anyone from her family might still be alive. No, you couldn't have done that. I'll tell you the truth, his last grandson, named Tenko, managed to escape my grasp, but that no longer matters, as he won't survive in this world, just like you." All for One found it repugnant to look at his adversary, and the mere thought of his quirk filled him with disgust, leading him not to steal from him, but rather revel in the agony of his foe. "Come on, kill me, what are you waiting for? Do it." At his desperate cries, the Almighty turned his attention to the unfolding scene, and despite the pain he felt, he leaped with such force that the ground beneath him formed a crater. All for One observed the Almighty's leap and prepared to unleash one of his most potent quirks, which had earned him the moniker, Harbinger of the Abyss. "That time will come, but for now, I'll revel in watching your pupil perish before your very eyes. You'll be begging for a swift end, Torino," All for One tightened his grip on Gran Torino's arm with such force that it shattered, exposing the broken bone and inflicting a torrent of pain, causing him to scream at the top of his lungs. The right arm was beyond recovery, yet All for One was not satisfied with the suffering inflicted and proceeded to break the second arm as well, pulling the bone out of its socket and causing him even more anguish. He released his grip on his throat, tossing him to the ground as Torino fell, while the Almighty soared in for a final strike. But All for One would not fall into the same trap again, underestimating his opponent as he activated a quirk of which he himself was a witness. Breath of flame, abyssal heat from his mouth, magma began to flow, oozing out like saliva, and flames began to emanate from the corners of his lips. Finally, unable to withstand any resistance, the fire erupted from his mouth with monstrous force, aimed squarely at the Almighty. The flames expanded to a width of 15 meters, making it impossible for his opponent to evade, forcing him to endure the impact. The heat of the fire reached a staggering 4,000 degrees Celsius, no living creature could withstand such extreme temperatures. The column of fire surged toward the Almighty, who braced himself for the inevitable impact, which scorched his suit, leaving only his trousers intact. The searing heat was something the Almighty had never encountered before, but in order to survive, he pushed One for All to its limits, reaching 130% of its capacity. One for All 130%. United States. SMASSSH, the flames could not endure the pressure, generating a monstrous wind that redirected the fire towards the forest, instantly igniting a blaze of unprecedented ferocity. 6 hectares of forest were engulfed in flames, reducing the vegetation to mere ash. The Almighty managed to strike All for One, piercing him through with his hand. The flames subsided, but the symbol of evil merely smirked in response to such an attack from the Almighty. Piercing a hole in his body, the Almighty attempted to withdraw his hand, but All for One seized it, crushing his right hand until it was rendered useless. Under the influence of adrenaline, the Almighty felt little pain, yet he could no longer move his arm. Extracting the object from his own body, All for One sent the Almighty crashing to the ground, activating the paralysis quirk that immobilized him completely. As he fell to the ground, he thought to himself, "Have we truly lost? This cannot be happening." Regretting not listening to Night Eye, he began to lament his recklessness that had led to the loss not only of his mentor but also of One for All, whom Nana Shimura had defended at the cost of her life. "I'm sorry, Night Eye. If only I had listened back then, we could have defeated him. Forgive me, Shimura-san, for I have let you all down," but the time for regrets had come to an end as he recalled his creed, which stated, "I never entered a fight expecting to lose." The smile I radiate should be the last thing the villain sees before his defeat. Falling to the ground, he quickly rose again, despite the sharp pain inflicted by his opponent's attacks. Looking around, he saw the fire that had consumed everything with an unprecedented force, spreading like a new plague. On the ground, he noticed his mentor writhing in pain, bleeding profusely. The Almighty would have helped, but through the flames emerged All for One, who was barely regenerating from the Almighty's assault. The horror was compounded by the fact that the Namu were still alive, and the total number of Nomu taken down by the Almighty exceeded 200 units. Through the flames, Namu began to swarm, attacking them furiously. The Almighty fought them off, but one of the claws nearly reached Gran Torino when something tore through the Nomu's body, ripping it apart. "What the?" said the Almighty as a hero from the shinobi emerged from the remnants of the Nomu. "Edge shot!" exclaimed the Almighty, astonished. Fully taking the form of a shinobi, he spoke in a serious tone, "Did you decide to leave without saying goodbye?" The Almighty had a multitude of questions about what he was doing here, but he asked the question that had arisen since the beginning of this battle. "Where did you come from?" The answer was quick, but it did not come from the shinobi, but from a voice that was hauntingly familiar. "Behind you, All Might Chapter 15, he is not alone, Night Eye," said All Might, surprised by his partner who was here, but this was his fight, not his. All Might stood up and took Gran Torino in his whole hand, who was breathing heavily. In the heat of battle, when fire and smoke enveloped the battlefield, All Might felt adrenaline boiling in his veins. He knew that time was not on his side and that every moment was precious. Around him, cries and sounds of combat echoed, and he understood that he had to do everything possible to protect his comrades. Suddenly, from behind the clouds of smoke, a Nomu burst forth with bright red light in its eyes. Its quirk, the creation of fiery tentacles, spread across the ground, leaving behind traces of scorched grass. All Might, noticing the approaching threat, instantly activated his powers. He gathered all his will into a fist and, using the Detroit Smash quirk, struck the ground with a powerful blow. At that moment, the ground trembled, and a powerful wave of energy radiated outward. The Nomu that was about to attack was knocked to the ground, its tentacles stretching and scattering like sand. But this was only a temporary relief. From behind the Nomu, another opponent with a quirk allowing him to manipulate time began to gather his power for the next strike. All Might. Be careful! Shouted Night Eye, seeing the enemy accumulating energy. He quickly rushed to his partner, but it was already too late. Time slowed down, and All Might felt his movements becoming slower. He saw the Nomu raising its hand, ready to unleash a deadly blow. Don't retreat! Shouted All Might, gathering his last strength. He knew he couldn't afford to fall now. Focusing, he activated his quirk, unleashing a powerful wave of energy onto the enemy. Suddenly, time returned to normal, and the forceful blow collided with the Nomu's attack. The energy erupted like an explosion, and a moment of silence hung in the air before a deafening sound erupted. All Might was thrown back, but gathering his strength, he quickly got back on his feet. The battle continued, and he realized he could not afford weakness. At that moment, another enemy joined the Nomu, possessing the ability to create electric discharges. He unleashed a torrent of lightning onto All Might, which, like snakes, slithered across the ground, aiming to strike the hero. But All Might, using his speed, dodged the attack, and the lightning struck the previously frozen ground, causing a powerful explosion. We can't let them seize the initiative. He shouted, gathering the remnants of his strength. He knew his team needed support. Focusing his energy, All Might activated a powerful attack, directing it toward the new enemies. At the same moment, when he released a powerful wave of energy, Edge Shot joined him. He used his quirk to increase his speed and create multiple copies of himself, which simultaneously attacked the Nomu from different sides. Come on, All Might! We can do this together! He shouted as his copies attacked the enemies with incredible speed, creating chaos among their ranks. Gathered together, they worked as a cohesive unit. All Might, bolstered by the support of his comrades, stood tall, his eyes burning with determination. He knew that their victory depended on unity and strength of spirit. Finally, combining their powers, they dealt a crushing blow to the Nomu. A powerful explosion of light erupted, and when the smoke cleared, they saw the remaining enemies defeated. The battle continued, but this episode became a turning point that gave the heroes hope and confidence for the upcoming confrontation. Mirai, he needs medical assistance. Take him to a safe place, I will cover you, said All Might, holding with one hand. At the same time, Edge Shot dealt with each Nomu, piercing them with his paper body at their vulnerable spots. It was easy to deal with the D-rank Nomu, which fell to the ground as he passed through their brains with his body. But All Might, your hand. You can't fight him with a broken hand. All Might understood Night Eye's concerns, but he said nothing, only passing the teacher into his hands. Edge Shot attempted to pierce the brain of All for One but was defeated, as his quirk had a countermeasure in the form of enhanced pyrokinesis which would have burned the hero's body had he not dodged in time. But before he could retreat, a powerful gust of air flew at him, knocking him a considerable distance away. Get away from my sight, you unfinished shinobi. Activating the air flow quirk, all four heroes were blown away, along with the Nomu. Annoyed that he was constantly being interrupted, he vanished amidst the flames, entering his muddy portal. The departing All Might wanted to raise his head when he saw the hand of All for One, which nearly touched his head to steal his quirk, but the hero rabbit swiftly kicked his hand away and then kicked him in the chest, sending him back 7 meters. Engaging him in hand-to-hand combat did not last long, as he grabbed her by all limbs with his barbed tentacles and struck her with one of his quirks, kinetic accumulator. But this blow did not faze Mirko, it only allowed her to sneer at such a weak attack. In reality, due to the adrenaline rush, she dulled the pain to mock him. "Well, I didn't expect that the symbol of evil would be some city punk in a slimy suit." The biting comments from Rumi and her attack provoked irritation in All for One, who prepared a gift for her. "Mirko," said All Might, limping from his injuries. Standing tall, he looked in her direction, knowing she wouldn't be able to handle him even if All for One were weakened. "All Might, Ed shot and I came here as fast as we could. Reinforcements should arrive in just a few minutes. We were instructed to hold him off until the other heroes arrive." Mirko was anticipating a bone-crushing battle with the symbol of darkness, but she understood that alone, with her physical strength, she wouldn't be able to cope. "Yes," a familiar but robotic voice responded to All Might from behind. "Who ordered you to come here? This is my fight. You will all die if you stay here. Oh dear, Toshinori will miss all the fun." "I don't think we should miss such a party," said a mouse in a robotic suit, who stood 2 meters tall. Activating his claws, he activated a force field meant to protect the limited space from All for One's attack. The flames spread at a monstrous speed, and it was hard to breathe in the forest due to the carbon dioxide, making it difficult for the heroes to breathe. The fire didn't care, it was glad to see Nizu right here and now. "Nizu," shouted All Might, smiling at the support. "He's the one." Behind Nizu began to appear portals, opening the possibility for the heroes to fight side by side for victory. All the top heroes emerged from the portals, helping All Might fend off the Nomu that were attacking them with even greater force. "We are here," said the hero Goliath, who could grow to 30 meters, increasing in size to crush All for One, but he suffered defeat from a larger laser that knocked him down. Everyone came to help All Might for the decisive battle. This scene further enraged All for One, and now this hero clown troupe in colorful tights would interfere with him achieving his plans. But the hero rabbit was interfering with his plans, using her agility to hinder him from taking off. Calming down, he struck her with a laser, launching her higher than the trees. The fire was increasingly burning the forest, but heroes with water quirks rushed in to extinguish it, although they were hindered by the Nomu, who were still a nuisance. Even with a bunch of professional heroes, some Nomu were stronger, and 17 pro heroes fell heroically fighting alongside All Might. "Like colorful fleas, you are no match for me, and you came to bury yourselves in a grave. The next thing you will see will be a zinc coffin," said All for One, soaring into the air to survey the territory. Internally satisfied with what he had done, he sought out All Might, who wanted his death more than anything. But during all this time, All Might had restored his arm thanks to the heroes with healing quirks, but for complete recovery, he needed time, which he didn't have. Leaving Gran Torino in the hands of the heroes, he jumped up, striking All for One with another powerful blow. Detroit Smash. But the attack was parried by a massive mutated hand that was a mixture of many quirks. Activating the gravity nullification, he lifted all the living Nomu and heroes into the air, and then, turning off the gravity, All for One threw them to the ground. Nothing should have happened to the Nomu, as even D-rank had weak regeneration that would heal them from falling, but the heroes, possessing the bodies of ordinary people, died from the fall, and out of 270 pro heroes, only 180 units remained, which had weakened during this attack. The sounds of cracking bones were music to All for One's ears, who listened to it as if it were a symphony. All Might, seeing this, became even angrier for his heroic comrades and could only hope that Night Eye remained safe after such a monstrous attack. "Well, All Might, as I see it, help isn't that strong despite the heroes. This is a battle between us, I didn't invite anyone else. And you, as the last liar, came alone and with backup, activating numerous quirks." He dealt a very serious blow to the left side. All Might fell to the ground, holding the wound that was bleeding profusely. "One must fall, and the other will rise above the fallen. Isn't that what the legend said, All Might? Who collapsed to the ground, no longer able to fight. But he did not pay attention to this wound and stood up once more for another attack. However, the last attack was interrupted by the Nomu, who rushed at all might. He was already about to give up when he heard a cargo plane in the sky, where a familiar American song was playing. 5 minutes earlier the cargo plane was flying, circling over the battlefield. The pilots watched the events on the ground, bewildered by the large fire. On board, there were only 2 heroes sitting in headphones, listening to a briefing about the situation on the battlefield. According to satellite radar, it is known that there are about 400 to 520 Nomu, but they still represent a formidable unit. As pro-heroes, you must eliminate them and provide All Might with support in the battle against All for One. You have no right to make mistakes. The fire is very intense, and close combat is not recommended, said the dispatcher to the young hero sitting next to him. The massive man in dark blue bodysuit with red hair threw a serious glance at his partner, hinting that he should not make foolish mistakes. The young man waved off the older one, looking somewhere into the distance with a relaxed face. Remember, your top priority is to help the heroes and eliminate all the Nomu on the field, said one of the pilots, looking at the radar. Discontentedly snorting, the older of the two went towards the hatch, which gradually opened, further irritating him as he wanted to jump into the fight despite everything. The young man lazily took off his headphones and decided to slowly walk towards the hatch, lazily extending his hand to his older partner. The latter looked into his eyes, where, frankly speaking, there was a clear reluctance to dive into this turmoil, as this was a state mission. His longing to help the other heroes left him no right to refuse. "Ready?" asked the big man his partner, ready to jump, but his partner quickly stopped him, saying he wasn't in the mood. Wait, I'm not in the mood. Just a minute," he said, further irritating his partner, but he nonetheless endured his outburst, letting out a dejected sigh. Casting a glance at the dispatcher, the young man gestured to turn the music up to full volume. "Hey buddy, turn on the music so the battle is more lively," said Hawks, looking at the ground where an intense battle was taking place. "Everything is on," said the pilot, raising a thumb. "Black Sabbath, Paranoid, good morning, Fujiyama," shouted Kigo. Despite the irritation of Stalker at his partner's frivolous outburst, he endured it without complaint. But his grimace changed immediately when his partner took on a serious look, jumping out of the plane ahead of him, causing Stalker to smirk. Jumping out of the plane, he instantly activated fire on his legs as he flew to the battlefield. Hawk, using his speed, began to attack most of the Nomu that were fighting with the heroes using his feathers. To maximize enemy losses, he flew through the crowd of enemies, attacking them to draw their attention. As he flew across the battlefield, several Nomu tried to hit him, but nothing worked except for scratching his jacket. Behind him was already a tail consisting of 120 ground Nomu and over 30 flying ones actively trying to tear him to pieces. Stalker, who was actively observing his partner's actions, said over the microphone, "Fly towards me." Kigo instantly flew towards him, watching the ground as the Nomu horde, like zombies, clawed at each other to reach him, but the last thing they saw was a fire comet flying toward them. Jetburn, a fiery fist the size of a small asteroid formed. In the eyes of the Nomu, the fire reflected, blinding them. With one swing, Stalker unleashed the wrath of the flame hero, which was scarier than All Might's. All this pile of Nomu turned into chunks of charred meat, emitting an odor that spread everywhere. Slamming his fist into the ground amid the fire, he realized he was surrounded by Nomu of rank B and A. Hawk controlled the air, and behind Stalker, flying Nomu rushed toward him. Hey, you don't have an invitation to this party." Joking, he aimed his sharp wings at their brains, instantly killing them. Soaring high into the air, he used his sharp vision to see that the heroes, due to the fire, could not cope with the Nomu, deciding to help them. He directed his feathers toward the heroes, falling to the ground. As he fell, his feathers had already managed to finish off at least 20 Nomu that threatened the heroes' lives. Dramatically throwing both arms over his neck, he would have crashed into the ground, but the feathers managed to gather on his back, forming wings, preventing him from kissing the ground. Flapping his wings, they tried to tear him apart with claws once again, but that was a futile attempt, as his agility was unmatched in the air. Hawk, seeing the last 10 flying Nomu, decided to take this seriously. Taking a long feather, he made a sword out of it, sharper than any handheld katana. The Nomu decided to attack in a crowd, but Hawk was faster, slicing the first 3 Nomu in half. After the second, he decapitated both, staining his clothes. "What a mess, you've stained my clothes." At such a comment, he looked at the Nomu that attacked him, subsequently breaking his protective glasses. "DMNU, those glasses cost 500k yen. I'll show you some real punishment." To the first one who flew up to him, he slashed him below the stomach, then sliced off his arms. The second flew up to him, but that one quickly died before he could rise again. Tired of such a fencing lesson, he sent his feathers in their direction, letting out a weary sigh. Now the air was clear of all monsters. "It's clear in the air, do you need help?" shouted Kigo to Stalker, who had already gathered all the remaining Nomu. He was already smiling. "Looking forward to a great fight." "Great. Go cover All Might, these monsters are mine." From his words, one impatient Nomu pounced on him. Before he could attack, he was quickly killed by Stalker's fiery fist. Spitting on the ground, he said, "Who's next?"